I'm going to wait just a few minutes because this is the first session and people are slowly coming in. And so we have, originally I thought we were going to spend 3 hours from 9 to 12, but then I saw the program, it says 9 to 1, so we have an extra hour. That means we can do everything in a relaxed way, both theory and practice. Practice, I mean some kind of meditation, reflection, all of that, so that theory and practice kind of match each other. If that's okay with you, because usually at science conferences there's no meditation. But we'll do that today if that's all right. Yes? Yes. Okay. Okay, so let's wait 5 minutes. Some of you might be wondering what these big chairs are, including one over there. These are grounding chairs, and if you go to our booth, the Chopra Foundation, Chopra Center, Jayo booth, you can pick up literature on these grounding chairs. So, and there are grounding mats and other grounding devices. And the idea behind this grounding movement is very simple. Anybody who's ever walked on the beach or on the ground, not on a cement pavement, but on the ground or on grass, barefoot, how many people have done that? Okay, you feel good, right, when you walk on the beach? And the reason is you're connected to the ground. And we are part of the earth recycling. Our body is part of the earth recycling. So people noticed a few years ago that when you are grounded, when you walk on the ground, you're connected to the earth. It makes people feel better subjectively, but also they have less jet lag, they sleep better, and in general, they don't get so fatigued. And so that was anecdotal till people started doing research on the phenomenon of grounding. And that is that when you walk barefoot on the ground, or the beach, or the grass, negative ions move from the body, from the earth into your body, and neutralize the excess free radicals that build up as a result of stress, which we all have, or even as a result of jet lag. So the earth is a big battery, and so is your body. And so is actually the solar system. Ultimately, the whole universe is permeated with an electromagnetic field. So when you ground yourself, you essentially connect with the earth, its electromagnetic field. Your body does that too, and you get rid of inflammation that builds up every day as a result of stress. So then people started creating these grounding devices, which means that when you sit on that chair, or on a mat, or even yoga mat, or you sit on the earth directly, then you rebalance your circadian rhythm. And because your circadian rhythm is part of, the solar system, which is part of the universe, you, in a sense, are aligning the elements and forces of your body in terms of electromagnetic forces with the forces of the universe. Which is a very basic idea, by the way, in Vedanta and Vedic literature, in Ayurveda. I think if you know anything about Ayurveda, then you've heard the expression yatha pinde tatha brahmande. As is the atom, so is the universe. As is the body, so is the cosmic body. As is the mind, so is the human mind, so is the cosmic mind. As is the atom, so is the universe. So we're an activity of the universe, and to be connected to the ground is actually part of our evolution. All animals except human beings are no longer connected to the ground. And you may have read reports when the tsunami happened in Southeast Asia. The animals knew before it happened because they could feel the tremor of the earth, even though the earthquake was far away, and they left. And some humans did too. But most of us these days, including myself, we're wearing rubber soles shoes. We're not grounded. And so Chopra Foundation, Chopra Center, and other people, University of California and San Diego, we're doing research on how grounding, and you can test. You can sit on that chair, invite you to take turns, or on a mat, or whatever, and you can test if you're grounded or not. I see Shamini's here, and Shamini is Shamini Jain. Stand up, Shamini. She's a pioneer in energy medicine, and she can tell you, I'm sure, a lot about grounding as well, and how that reduces inflammation, inflammatory markers, etc., etc. Okay. So you're welcome to try it, yeah, but give other people an opportunity as well. There are 3 chairs here. I have no idea why, but there's one outside too. Okay, so let's talk. I think we have a decent number of people in the room, and more are coming. So let us now start. And as I said, we have 4 hours. I'll take breaks. We can take breathing breaks, stretching breaks, meditation breaks, and cover everything that we can in the time we have about today's topic. So today's topic is called Neuroscience of Enlightenment. So let's actually look at those 2 words, because in the West, many times when the word enlightenment is used, it refers to the European Enlightenment, which was definitely a great period in European history, which goes back now almost 300 years. There was the emergence of Newtonian science, Newtonian physics. There was the philosopher Descartes and Leibniz and many other philosophers that followed. And there were great artists, and basically the European Enlightenment led to both the age of industry, science, and also the age of science as we understand science today, and also a renaissance. It's also called the Renaissance, movement in art, architecture, and so on. So it was a very interesting period in European history that ultimately led to what we have today. You know, technology, science, internet, which was a revolution that began only 100 years ago, the quantum revolution, and so on, all triggered by the European Enlightenment. But that's not what I'm going to talk about today. Today I'm going to talk about Enlightenment as it is understood in Eastern wisdom traditions. And the closest that anyone came to that understanding of enlightenment were people who actually delved into Eastern wisdom traditions, like Emerson, Thoreau, Aldous Huxley, and many others, Walt Whitman, and other even transpersonal psychologists like Abraham Maslow, who use the word self-actualization. So there is a tradition of understanding of Eastern wisdom tradition through the eyes of Western thinkers. The Eastern wisdom traditions, which talk about enlightenment, go back thousands of years to the great rishis of India. The word rishi means one who sees. Rishi is a seer. And there's a distinction between seeing and perception. Perception is this experience we are all having. And seeing the seer goes beyond the filter of perception to understand fundamental reality. And not only to understand fundamental reality, but to experience it. And that process has many names: self-realization, enlightenment, understanding the universe as complementarity to the fundamental consciousness in which the universe is experienced. It's also called, in the Sanskrit, it's also called moksha. In English, you would pronounce it moksha, M-O-K-S-H-A. And so moksha is, and many people use the word jivan mukti, which means freedom while you're in a particular incarnation, a human incarnation. Freedom from what? Freedom from all conditioning. Because our mind is conditioned. Everybody's mind is conditioned. And the conditioning comes from our parents, from religion frequently. It comes from culture. It comes from history. It comes from economics. And in many ways, every thought that you have, is centuries of conditioning. Centuries of conditioning. In other words, your thoughts actually don't belong to you. They just recycle through you. Unless it's an amazingly creative thought. You know, Einstein, E is equal to mc squared, a breakthrough in science, in art, in a deeper understanding of creativity. Creativity is a breakthrough, you know, true creativity. I'm not talking about artificial intelligence, which can simulate creativity and will do so in the near future. But true creativity means something emerges that never existed before. So creativity, of course, is an expression of our consciousness. So in many ways, you could say that enlightenment also involves fundamental creativity, not artificial creativity or simulated creativity, not creativity that can be put in an algorithm, but creativity that is a discontinuity. It breaks all kind of conditioning. And that's a tough call, because every thought that you have is a conditioned mind. Every thought that you have. Think of any thought. There's no original thought that you and I have, unless we've broken out of that. So creativity means all those things that we understand by creativity. It's breakthroughs in science, breakthroughs in art, breakthroughs in an understanding of the universe, and breakthroughs in context, meaning, and relationship. And therefore, you create something with the same information that you had before, but what emerges is something that never existed before. So the closest to that, the Indian Vedic understanding of that through the seers of the Upanishads is breaking of karma. So, you know, you've heard this word karma. It's so popular now, it's part of our lexicon. But that's what karma is. Karma is the conditioned mind, the fragmented mind, what Krishnamurti used to call the fragmented mind. Karma is past experience that we have had through the choices we've made, but not all choices have been made consciously, right? There are lots of choices we make unconsciously as a result of our conditioned mind, which is our thought. And the thought is a result of centuries, if not thousands of years of human conditioning, culture, religion, history, economics, geographical location, etc., etc. And every thought is that. That's why many times Krishnamurti used to speak of what is beyond the conditioned mind is where the truth is. So in ordinary terms, you use the same information that you've had before. You break out of the karmic conditioning and you expand creativity till you understand yourself as the source of infinite creativity. But yourself is not your conditioned mind, which you could also call the ego mind, if you want. Deepak Chopra. This is the conditioned mind and its body and its experience. So that is enlightenment, to break out of all conditioning and understand yourself as the source of all experience, but also not the source of all experience, who you are beyond experience. And the word for that is pure consciousness. Okay, so that's enlightenment, to get that journey that we take to enlightenment. Okay, now let's talk about neuroscience. So neuroscience is part of the other sciences, biology, and today neuroscience is also includes things like cognitive science. It also includes things like a basic understanding of biology. But today, neuroscience also includes mathematics, physics, the deeper understanding of brain and matter through these other sciences. So neuroscience is very much linked to the biological sciences, but also to physics, quantum mechanics these days, mathematics, etc. But science by itself is a system of thought that humans have created. I think nobody would disagree with that. There's a methodology to science: observation, experimentation, validation, falsifiability, etc., etc. These are the methodologies. The loop is always theory, experiment, observation, validation, or falsifiability. And if we stick to those principles, we can say we are doing science. But we should also recognize that science is a system of thought using a particular methodology. So science attempts to model reality. Science does not give you the experience of reality, nor does it actually give you access to reality. And I know this whole week is called the science of consciousness. But we have to understand that science is a system of thought in consciousness. What came first, science or consciousness? It's very obvious that consciousness is needed in order to do science. Okay, so to say science of consciousness, in a sense, and I do this with great respect, is actually in a way to mystify something and make it even more complicated. Science is a system of thought. Reality is that which gives rise to thought, because without thought there would be no system of thought. The reality is not, science cannot give you access to reality. And this is very clear. Of course, the Vedantists and Eastern philosophers, they talk about science of consciousness in a different way, and that is how we use consciousness to understand consciousness. Because only consciousness can understand consciousness, only consciousness can experience consciousness, and ultimately only consciousness can explain consciousness. Because only awareness can be aware. Okay, we'll go into this in deeper detail as we move, but I want to start with saying that no science can ultimately explain consciousness. Only consciousness can explain science and the methodologies of science. And this is true of theology. Theology is, another discipline. There have been great theologians throughout the centuries. They have created models of reality, but they have a different methodology. They call it philosophy. In fact, if you look at the word philosophy, it means, philo means love, and philosophy actually is love for knowledge. So philosophy, in fact, science used to be called natural philosophy before we started calling it science. But again, theology is a system of science. A system of thought. It's a system of thought, different methodology. Introspection, understanding, theories about reality, so on. What about religion? Well, traditional religion is also a system of thought. Okay. Of course, based on probably an experience that whoever was the founder of that religion had. The experience, usually when you look at the common experiences of religion, they include, number one, transcendence. Transcendence means going beyond subject-object split. Right now, I'm the subject of experience. You're the objects of experience, so is this room. But for you, of course, you're the subject, and I'm the object, as is this microphone. But in fundamental reality, there's no subject-object. It's all one activity. You are an activity of the universe looking at itself through a human nervous system. So the subject-object split is artificial. All of our science is based on subject-object split. Observer, observed. And yet science works. I mean, I'm using a microphone, we all use computers, we came from different parts of the world, taking jet planes, all because of science. Our whole technology today, both divine and diabolical, is because of the modeling we create through science. But I go back to religion is also, for the most part, a system of thought, but based on an experience. And the experience was transcendence, going beyond subject-object split, number one. Number two, the religious experience. I'm not talking about religious ideology right now. Ideology straight away says ideas. And of course, I have to use words, so I'm expressing ideas because without words, we would not be communicating. But we have to remember what, the great Sufi poet Rumi said, God's language is silence, everything else is poor translation. So everything else, religion, science, theology, philosophy, are poor translations. Religious experience is different. Religious experience is based on transcendence, going beyond subject-object split. Then the emergence from that experience of what in the West are usually referred to as Platonic values. Platonic, after Plato, truth, goodness, beauty, harmony, a deeper understanding of inseparability, and then moral values that emerge out of that, such as love, compassion, empathy, joy, peace of mind. So that's the second component of the religious experience. First is transcendence. And the third component of the religious experience is loss of the fear of death. Not the religious ideology, but the religious experience. Loss of the fear of death because the transcendent, which is beyond space and time, which is fundamental reality, the transcendent is not subject to birth or death. Birth and death happen to an experience, but not to the consciousness in which that experience happens, because the consciousness is timeless. Only the experience is in time. Those three are the fundamental components of a religious experience. But then, founders of religion found it hard to explain their experience to people who had not had the experience. So the religious experience gets replaced by religious ideology, rules, regulations, imposed morality, and so on, which then becomes another system of thought. So I want to clarify today that I'm going to be talking about, when I say neuroscience, it's a system of thought. It's a model. It's like a map. Maps are useful. And if I tell you, I'll meet you at the corner of 56th and Broadway, then it's likely that we'll meet at 12 noon on Sunday, May such and such, year such and such. Remember, those are all artificial constructs, right? They're all human artificial constructs, but they make it possible for us to meet at the corner of Broadway and 56th. And that's useful. When you fly a jet plane, the captain or whoever the navigator is, they put in what are called, numbers into the computer, and then the plane takes you from Tokyo to New York. But both Tokyo, New York, the plane, and the numbers are human constructs. We'll get to that in a little while. So neuroscience cannot explain consciousness, nor can mathematics, nor can physics, nor can biology, because these are all created in human consciousness. But they are very useful maps. Without these constructs, we wouldn't have what we call human civilization. Do we have a human civilization? Mahatma Gandhi said it would be a good idea if we had one. Because what we call human civilization has huge advantages. We're in this air-conditioned room, but we've also created atom bombs and nuclear weapons and now hacking and food that has poison, or what we consume, not connected to the earth or the world or to each other. So civilization is a very complex word. Actually I remember reading when I was a child a letter that Pandit Nehru, the founding Prime Minister of India, wrote to his daughter Indira Gandhi from prison. He was in British. She asked him the word, what is civilization? And it's a very beautiful letter that he wrote back about how complex it is to even use that word, civilization. Would another species looking at us think of us as civilized? The only species that kills its own kind in the name of God, the only species that is causing the extinction of all other species, the only species that is risking our own extinction, the only species that has created a junkyard in infinity in our own solar system, etc., etc. So it's a complicated thing, civilization. Okay, so I want to just start this whole morning, since we have so much time, by making clear that even though I'm calling neuroscience of enlightenment, neuroscience cannot make us enlightened, but it can give us a good map. I'll meet you at the corner of 56th and Broadway. Rumi says, they're out beyond ideas of right doing and wrong doing, there's a field, I'll meet you there. That's beyond the constructs. Okay, that doesn't require neuroscience. Okay, so let me start with how we create the human universe, and then we go into enlightenment, because enlightenment is actually understanding that on the level of experience, by showing you the first 3 minutes or so of public television show that is is showing right now in June. So if you're in the United States, you can check your local listings, and you will see the show is called You Are the Universe, based on the last book that I did with Menas Kafatos, who's a quantum physicist, cosmologist, climate change expert. And the show is currently showing all over the country. And so here's the first 3 minutes. I'm Dr. Deepak Chopra. In the next 60 minutes, I hope we can all together, with a little help and insight from me, help solve the mystery of our existence. I was traveling through the country, and one of the places that was part of my tour was Los Angeles. I was picked up at the airport by my son Gautam and my grandson Krishu as we call him, who was then 5 years old. He's a very smart little mind, a very smart little fellow. So as we got out of the airport, he looks at me and he says, Dada. Dada is the Indian word for grandfather on the father's side. He said, Dada, what is dark energy? Interesting question to come from a 5-year-old. And I said to him, what do you know about dark energy? And he said, it flows through the night sky. Very poetic, very beautiful. I said, what else do you know about it? He said, it's 70% of the universe. I'm thinking to myself, how does he know all this? We get out of the airport, we're driving in the car, we're driving in Santa Monica. I roll down the window and we can smell the ocean, we can see the ocean. He looks at me again, he says, how did they make that? I said, make what? He said, how did they make the ocean? I said, who make the ocean? And he said, they. I said, that's not a precise question. You have to tell me what you mean by they. And so I can see him thinking for a bit, and he reframed the question. He said, how did the ocean get made? So I said, the ocean got made the same way as the earth got made. A giant star exploded, and that was the solar system. We're a planet amongst many. The ocean is part of the elements of this planet. And then I kind of turned to him and I said, do you know how many planets there are in the solar system? And he said, well, if you count Pluto, there are 9. But if you don't count Pluto, because some people don't think Pluto is a planet, then there are 8. I said, and where did the solar system come from? He said, the galaxy. I said, where did the galaxy come from? He said, the universe. And I asked him, I said, and where did the universe come from? And without batting an eyelid, he said, from another dimension. So, you know, I'm Indian, I'm thinking, who's this kid? You know, we believe in reincarnation and all that, so I'm thinking to myself, Galileo, Copernicus, maybe even Einstein. I said, Krishu, how do you know all this? He said, it's on my Pokemon. Okay, so that was my grandson when he was 5 years of age. And he got his education from Pokemon. But those are interesting questions, and we shall address them. Okay. This is a very short history of how human beings have thought about the universe. divine universe, classic universe, relativistic universe, quantum universe, human universe. Then a little bit beyond that, you are the universe. A little bit beyond that, the universe is a human construct. And then even beyond that, there's no universe. Please don't leave. We experience something called the universe, and it's our creation. And then finally enlightenment, where we understand that the self of the individual is the self of the universe, or that which we call the universe. And I'll tell you why I'm using that expression. Okay, so here's the first beginning of human beings thinking about reality. Of course, this is a picture from the Sistine Chapel, and so you see God usually represented as a white male somewhere, and God is the universe and is the source and origin of life and mind. This version exists everywhere. But God is usually, not always, thought as in anthropocentric terms, depending on the era of when the religion was founded, usually patriarchal era, so therefore God is male, God is depicted as old and wise, a great sage, and God is basically the source and origin of life and mind. This version is there in almost every religion. And this is now the European Enlightenment. Sir Isaac Newton, by the way, who was a biblical scholar and actually did believe in the literal version of the Bible, but at the same time, an extraordinary mind. So, you can be religious and scientific at the same time. And basically, he came up with the beginnings of science, and the giant of science, really. The universe is, by classic, I mean the experience, space-time and matter, created by fixed laws of nature, knowable through human reason and logic. Never mind what's the source of human reason and logic, which none of these guys addressed, right? But nevertheless, a methodology emerged, and around this time there were other luminaries, Leibniz, Descartes, Spinoza, Voltaire. Descartes, the French philosopher Descartes, is credited with the philosophy of dualism. So mind and spirit is one domain, and matter is the other domain, and the two somehow interact. We don't know how, but this was the beginning of dualism, and as you've all heard the famous expression, I think, therefore I am. Turns out that's misleading, okay? Because I am, therefore I think, should be the right sequence, right? How can you think before you are? Okay, but anyway, this was a beginning of the dualistic philosophy in the European Enlightenment. It created great waves, including, the animosities between the church and people like Copernicus and Galileo and so on. But part of that was political. The scientists could take care of the physical world, and the priests, the Catholic priests, could take care of the spiritual world, and therefore there's some peace ultimately ensued, although you know that Galileo was only forgiven recently in our own lifetime, right? So the animosity persisted, but yet there was a kind of a peace between those that were the guardians of religion and those that took care of the material understanding of the world through science. So the classic universe described the laws of motion, universal gravitation, Kepler's laws of planetary motion. Kepler was the one who actually explained planetary motion originally. Newton, who formulated the laws, but Newton explained them in mathematical terms much more elegantly. And so we came to understand the motion of objects on Earth and of celestial bodies, and of course, the laws of thermodynamics, which hold true to this day. In fact, just based on these laws was the Industrial Revolution. Automobiles and everything that we know. You can send men to the moon based on these laws. That's pretty impressive. Okay, so then we had, of course, a new version explaining reality, which we call the relativistic universe. Albert Einstein, 1879 through 1955. I went to Israel, by the way. I've been to Israel 4 times, and the last time I went, which is just a couple of months ago, I made arrangements through certain friends of mine to look at Einstein's papers, the original papers, and they're handwritten. The submission to physics for the theories of relativity is written by hand. And of course, a lot of, you can see his thinking because he erases certain sentences, he crosses out formulas. You can see he's struggling, and finally he gets it, and all that is there. But in the library, Einstein's library, is also, there are photographs, and there is a description of the meeting between Einstein and the great Indian poet sage, Rabindranath Tagore. How many people know of or heard of Rabindranath Tagore? Few. So Tagore was an Indian poet, came from a very illustrious Bengali family. The father was also a great philosopher. Tagore's family was one of artists and philosophers. But Tagore became the most famous of them because he published a collection of poems called Gitanjali, which his friend W.B. Yeats from Ireland helped translate. Actually, W.B. Yeats found Tagore, discovered Tagore, and Tagore ended up getting the Nobel Prize in English for a translation of Bengali poems. And so there was a lot of curiosity about Tagore when he got the Nobel Prize. And he made a European tour, he met Bertrand Russell, and ultimately he was invited by Einstein to meet him in a small place outside of Berlin called Potsdam. And the meeting was very interesting because, as you know, Einstein was a great philosopher as well. But he was wedded to what in Western philosophy is called realism. Today, much of that, what we call realism, is also called naive realism. Okay, so if you want to look up naive realism, go on the internet and look up. But naive realism says that the world is as we experience it. Right now, this is the real world, which of course leads to all kinds of conundrums, including the hard problem of consciousness, which we'll come to. But Tagore was a realist, a naive realist, great mind. And not Tagore, Einstein was a naive realist. And Tagore was what we would call an idealist, but even more beyond this. He was grounded and steeped in the tradition of Vedanta. So they had a very, in fact, that conversation that they had, which was reported in many newspapers, even the New York Times had a little thing, which was, you know, and that was a very turbulent time. 1930, the war was going to break on, Nazi Germany was going to emerge, Hitler was emerging, and these guys were talking about reality, ultimate reality. So that conversation is there. In fact, it's inspired me to write the book, You Are the Universe. And there's a very interesting argument between, and very polite argument between Tagore and Einstein. And it's about this: is the world that we experience real, or is there something more fundamental? And of course, you can see that Tagore was hinting at consciousness, because he said the world you experience, we experience, is a human world. He used that word. But Einstein said no. There's a human understanding or philosophy about the world, but then there's a scientific view of the world. And Tagore responded to that by saying the scientific view is the view of the scientific human being, to which Einstein had no answer. He said, but my religion, he used the word, is science. Okay. Now I'm not maybe quoting them exactly, but that was the gist. He used the word religion. He says, that is my religion, which means I have faith in the scientific method to give us a true understanding of reality. You can see from that conversation, which you can, by the way, find on the internet. It's in my book as well, most of the conversation, but you can find it on the internet. It ends in very polite disagreement. And when I went to the Israel Museum, the curator of the museum, who's a physicist, and you know, these days we are not so polite, he said to me, he said, Einstein was just being polite. He thought Tagore was full of bullshit. Okay? So that's today's conversation. I think Einstein had much more respect for Tagore. So anyway, Einstein came up with the two theories. 1905 is the special theory of relativity, which we don't need to go into. But I think, you know, when I was growing up as a kid, I tried so hard to understand it. And it was very difficult. I read all kinds of books. But slowly, as you grow up, you begin to understand things. So I can say now that I do understand these theories very well. But this is the gist of the special theory. Mass and energy are equivalent. You've heard of the formula. Every school child has heard of the formula. E is equal to mc squared. The speed of light is a constant for all frames of reference. And basically, this is it. And then 1915, he came up with the general theory of relativity, which basically, in a way, he replaced Newton's theories of gravity. And so he gave a description of gravity as a geometric property of space-time, which means gravity is the curvature of space-time. Now, you can't imagine that, but there are many visuals. If you go on the internet, you'll see many visuals of a big mass in a net, and the net is space-time. And then in the middle of the net is resting this big mass, possibly Earth. And so that's a distortion of space-time. And with that came the understanding much later. Einstein didn't know anything about black holes, the gravitational redshift of light, gravitational time delay. So when you go, when you're at the event horizon of the black hole, time starts to slow down for an observer outside the black hole, and time stops at the black hole. And the distance between the black hole and the event horizon is about 12 kilometers. And this is where time starts to slow down enormously and then stop. You know, a few years ago, I was invited by my co-writer of the other book that I did, War of the Worldviews, with Leonard Mlodinow, who was also co-writer, co-author of Grand Design by Stephen Hawking. So it was a birthday celebration in New York for Stephen Hawking, and Stephen Hawking was there, hooked up to a computer, the whole bit, you know, the whole apparatus through which he communicates. And in honor of Stephen Hawking's birthday, they had a performance, a ballet, with a symphony orchestra. And it's about people on planet Earth in a giant spaceship, which is as big as, you can say, as a city, the spaceship. And they're going to a distant galaxy, which is many light years away. And there are thousands of people on this spaceship, and by the time they'll get to that galaxy, many thousands of generations will have passed. They live in this spaceship, going through intergalactic space. And there's a boy there who's about 12 years old. His name is Icarus, after the Greek Icarus. You remember the story of Icarus, right? You've all heard of the story of Icarus, I hope. But anyway, this is the modern story of Icarus. And Icarus's dad says, now listen, we are going to be skirting some black holes as we go through these galaxies. I'm warning you, don't go near one. Because, you know, the ship is a giant ship. It has little shuttle ships in it where you can take off. And so he says, you better not mess with the black hole. You're my son, and you're my only son. I don't want to lose you. So Icarus is 12 years old, and as one day they're floating through interstellar space, and he goes through his computer numbers, and he sees there's a black hole in the neighborhood. And of course, he decides not to follow his father's instructions. He gets to the dock. He gets into this little space shuttle. He messes with the computers, leaves the ship in the direction of the black hole. And he gets to the event horizon, where time starts to slow down, and the black hole is no time, remember? According to this theory. So he's skirting the black hole, and he's very skillful. He wobbles on the event horizon. You know, his event horizon. Think of a circle, and then a funnel, and the funnel of the circle goes to where the black hole is. The black hole is a point of infinite density and zero volume, and therefore no space-time, okay? And the event horizon is about 12 kilometers around the black hole, which is the rim of the funnel. So Icarus is very skillful. He kind of skirts around the black hole. He wobbles. He might go in. He might fall out. But he skirts around the black hole twice. Takes him a few seconds. And then he pulls himself out of the gravitational field through, of course, manipulating the computers. Remember, 12-year-old kid of the future. And my grandson, 5-year-old kid of the future. And he skirts the black hole, and he pulls out of the gravitational field, and he's exhilarated. He radios his dad. He says, Dad, I did it. I explored the black hole, and I came out. I don't go beyond There's no answer. He says, Dad, I did it. No answer. But remember, this is all a ballet with music and symphony. Beautiful experience. So he keeps trying to find his dad, and there's no answer. So finally he starts to cry, and the space drift, and his shuttle spaceship, little one, drifts off into interstellar space and is lost. And the next day he opens his eyes and he sees there's a galaxy with lots of stars, lots of planets. And so again, he uses his computer, he lands on a planet. And there are people there. And they look at this boy who's coming out of the spaceship, and they welcome him. They're very happy to welcome him. And then they look at him and they say, where did you get that ship from? He says, that's my father's spaceship, and that's the shuttle. They say, yeah, but that model went out about 10 million years ago. So what happened in a few seconds around the black hole was 10 million years for these people. And that was the future generations of the people that had left with Icarus's dad. Now, this is a great story because it is actually explains. Today, people have discovered gravity waves, and you know of the LIGO experiments. So Einstein's theory holds true. I'm reminded actually of a story that I kind of made up many years ago to explain this to my kids. When they were younger, I said an American tourist ends up at the edge of the black hole, just like Icarus did. He looks into it and stares at the black hole, infinite density, zero volume, and he shouts, "Are you God? Are you Brahman?" And a voice echoes back and says, "Yes, I am." He said, "Well, this guy is American, so, I think of myself as American too, partly." He says, "I've heard, Brahman, that on your side of this event horizon, even a penny is worth $1 billion. Brahman says, "Yes, that's true." He says, "Well, can I have a penny?" And Brahman says, "Sure, can you wait a second?" Same story of Icarus. What's even less than a fraction of a second on this side could be eternity on the other side. So anyway, this theory holds true. And the relativistic universe is much more dynamic. Space-time, matter are interdependent. Nobody argues about that. And around the same time as Albert Einstein, there were these other guys, Niels Bohr, Schrödinger, Max Planck, Paul Dirac, Werner Heisenberg. And they were luminaries as well, some of the greatest luminaries of all time. And they together formulated quantum mechanics. This was a joint effort in a way. If you've heard of the meetings in Solvang and Copenhagen, etc., Niels Bohr was the father of quantum physics. Einstein actually gave the first formula, known as the Einstein-Podolsky-Rosen equation, that describes non-locality. Even though he himself didn't believe in it, he called it spooky action at a distance. So Einstein was a reluctant participant. Einstein was a reluctant participant in the quantum revolution, but nevertheless a great contributor. And quantum mechanics basically deals with the behavior of electrons and photons and other elementary particles. It describes fundamental processes which are ambiguous in that there's both wave and particle duality. So before measurement, what you have is a wave of probabilities. After measurement, you have a particle. And the two are totally different. A particle is a thing, supposedly. It has units of mass and energy. And a wave is just the probability of finding something at the moment of measurement. So this gave rise to other understandings. The movement of atoms is random. There's something called the uncertainty principle, which means you cannot know the momentum or the position of a particle with equal certainty. There's something called superposition, which means that before measurement as well, there are superposition of possibilities. And that, if you measure a particle in one location in space-time, you instantly determine the behavior of another correlated particle in a different location in space-time, And there's no communication between the two particles. It's just that their behaviors are, or their states are correlated. This is what Einstein misleadingly calls spooky action at a distance. There's no spooky action at a distance. It's just that the determination of the state of a quantum system in one location in space-time instantly correlates or determines the state of that system without any communication, which is very puzzling, but it gave rise to this whole idea of non-locality that we'll talk about. Okay, and here a wave function provides information about the probability amplitude of the position, momentum, and other physical properties of a particle upon measurement. But all possibilities exist before measurement. Okay, so you say, okay, it's very successful, by the way. Quantum mechanics is the basis of everything that we do today. 70% of our economy is based on the calculations of quantum mechanics. That includes your computers, transistors, these days what is called new ideas about quantum computing, but today's technologies are based on the calculations of quantum mechanics, which works even though it maintains that the universe is random, the movement of atoms is random, it can still predict probabilities with such uncanny precision that we rely on it for all our technologies. But then what does that mean? What are the interpretations of quantum mechanics? So what do we mean when we say interpretations? Interpretations are sets of statements which attempt to explain quantum mechanics beyond the recipes it gives for performing calculations. So yes, the calculations work, but what does this tell us about reality? Okay, and so this topic is of special interest to philosophers of science and of course to physicists as well. And so these are the three most important people in my mind after Niels Bohr, who contributed to that, but this is what you go to Wikipedia. I usually don't quote Wikipedia because some of the information is not quite accurate, but when it comes to science, they do a pretty good job, okay? So here are the interpretations of quantum mechanics. We don't have time to go through this, but there are over 20. And every day, more interpretations of quantum mechanics, which should tell you that nobody knows what's going on. Okay? But the two most popular interpretations are the Copenhagen Interpretation, which until recently was actually the most popular, which said that the wave function collapses when a measurement is made. So of course a measurement has to be made by some observer. So it brings about the role of the observer into the equation, even though they may be observing instruments, but observing instruments are also extensions of the observer. So this has been the most popular, and this was the original interpretation of quantum mechanics by the pioneers of quantum mechanics. But remember, as soon as you introduce an observer, you've introduced consciousness. A conscious observer has to make a measurement to collapse the wave function. So, you know, fashions come and go in science, and until recently, the most popular interpretation, but recently many worlds and meta-worlds have taken over. They are more popular because they don't imply the role of a conscious observer. Okay? The collapse of the wave function occurs without the need for an observer. But this leads to many other conundrums that I'll explain to you in a moment. So until recently, that was the case, and it no longer is the case. So this desire to interpret quantum mechanics has led to many mathematical guessing games. Eternal inflation, superstring theories, many worlds, multiverses, M theory, and all these are mathematical theories where there is no possibility even of gathering data or making observations from what occurred before the Big Bang, which is the hypothetical event 13.8 billion years ago that gave rise to the universe we're in. So there's no way of corroborating, and what we say, this is the uncertain universe of our times. You can again go on the internet and look at a TED Talk or many TED Talks on what is happening right now amongst physicists who are formulating theories, and they all are mathematically true in that the mathematical equations explain their theories, which is what, what's his name, Eugene Wigner said, the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics. Why is mathematics so effective in predicting what we observe? But these mathematical theories currently, most of them here, including superstring theory, eternal inflation, M theory, cannot be validated, even theoretically. There's no theoretical way of validating any of these theories. But they exist. And right now, eternal inflation is the most popular. And eternal inflation is a theory that was created or formulated by a scientist called Andrei Linde, who's a Russian scientist at Stanford. And it's very complicated, mathematical, but it's the #1 theory right now. So I asked Joel Primack, who's a cosmologist and actually one of the authors of the double dark theory of the universe, dark matter, dark energy, and Joel is a good friend of ours, has been to many of our conferences. I said, can you explain to me eternal inflation? And it's in his book also, by the way, which is called A View from the Center of the Universe. So this is eternal inflation as explained by an eternal inflation basically, and all these other theories do not need consciousness, okay? The universe is random, we hit the jackpot. So eternal inflation is, here's the metaphor. Imagine a cosmic Las Vegas outside of space-time. And the cosmic Las Vegas has an infinite number of casinos. And imagine that each of these casinos has an infinite number of slot machines. And then imagine that each slot machine is throwing up coins randomly for an infinite amount of time, for eternity. If the coin comes back heads up, it doubles in size. If the coin comes back tails up, it halves in size. And it's totally random, whether you're going to get a heads up or a tails up. Remember, this is a metaphorical way of explaining the math, which none of you would probably understand, I don't. But you ask the physicists to explain it metaphorically, this is their metaphor. Now, so imagine one scenario where there is an infinity of tails sequentially. So you get tails up, tails up, tails up, tails up for almost infinity till the coin gets to Planck size, which is 10 to the power of minus 37 centimeters. And there's a hole in the cosmic casino, which is about that big, a little bigger. And this quantum fluctuation escapes the hole and spins off into a universe. And because this is happening for infinity in infinite casinos and infinite slot machines and infinite coins all at the same time, therefore there are infinite universes. In fact, Stephen Hawking's M theory says 10 to the power of 500 universes. Maybe there are. But because they are in other dimensions of space-time, we will never, this biological apparatus, will never be able to experience them. So that's the #1 theory right now. we hit the lottery. We hit the jackpot. There are infinite number of universes. And if they have living beings or species, then they are not like us. But we cannot say anything about them except they are mathematically possible. And if you read this book, The Mathematical Universe by, what's the guy at MIT? Huh? Tegmark. That's Tegmark says if it's there mathematically, then it's there. Okay, and there may be validity to that, but there's no way for us to understand that. Max Tegmark, thank you very much. So here we are. We are at a point where the fabric of nature has basically reached a dead end. Dark matter, which is invisible, a hypothetical particle that creates dark matter called WIMP, weakly interacting massive particle. So that's a hypothetical particle that creates dark matter, but we actually call it dark matter because we cannot see it. And the reason we cannot see it is because it doesn't interact with light. So it doesn't reflect light, it doesn't absorb light, it doesn't emit light, it has nothing to do with light. And all our interactions are atomic. You and I are made up of atoms, but dark matter is supposedly not made up of atoms at all. So we cannot interact with it because we are made of atoms and our interactions are through light. Why call it matter then? The reason we call it matter, or they call it matter, is it holds a galaxy together. It's the scaffolding of an entire galaxy. So we live in the Milky Way galaxy, and there are, next door is Andromeda, then Virgo, and on and on. At the moment, scientists compute, cosmologists, that there are 2 trillion galaxies. Mind-boggling. Okay? They also compute that there are 700 sextillion planets. And there are trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions, uncountable trillions of planets. 700 sextillion stars, sorry. 700 sextillion stars, 2 trillion galaxies, and uncountable trillions of planets. And actually, therefore, the likelihood of billions and billions of habitable planets, mathematically. In fact, only recently, if you've been keeping up with the literature, there was a system similar to a solar system discovered next door with possible habitable planets. So, you know, the reason I'm mentioning this is also part of the Yoga Vaishishta. There's a phrase in the Yoga Vaishishta, infinite universes come and go in the vast expanse of consciousness. Infinite universes come and go in the vast expanse of consciousness. They're like motes of dust dancing in a beam of light. Beautiful metaphor. Imagine a stream of light coming through a hole in the roof, and you see these dust particles. These are infinite universes. So actually, but the only difference is they're all in consciousness. They're all in the consciousness of the one being. Okay, but dark matter holds a galaxy together. It's invisible. It's not atomic. And furthermore, it's almost 26% of the universe. What about dark energy? Dark energy is the word that mathematicians now give and physicists now give to what Einstein called the cosmological constant. So the cosmological constant is the same as dark energy, which means that there's an energy permeating the universe which is anti-gravity, which is causing the universe to expand. It's based on the idea that the universe is expanding. And what is expanding? The space between galaxies is expanding. So space is being ripped apart. Because the cosmological constant is a constant, as the space between galaxies expands, the speed of expansion accelerates. So right now we are where we are. The cosmic horizon is 47 billion light years away from where we are. And galaxies are moving across that right now faster than the speed of light. faster than the speed of light. So in a few billion years, the sky will be dark. You will not be able to see stars and anything else because they will have moved across the cosmic horizon. And by that time, light comes from the cosmic horizon to where we are. Our solar system will have exhausted its thermonuclear energy and burnt itself up into the heat death of absolute zero. That's 70% of the universe. What is it? No one knows. It's a mathematical construct. Based on what? The fact that the universe is expanding. What is expanding? Space is expanding. The space between galaxies. Galaxies as a unit are held together by dark matter. That leaves only 4% of the universe, which is atomic. Of that, 99.99% is invisible interstellar dust. So we can't see that either. The visible universe, which is supposedly 2 trillion galaxies, hypothetically possible, 700 sextillion stars, and trillions of planets, is 0.01%. The rest is either unknown or unknowable. Now here's the problem with the 0.01%. The 0.01% with all those trillions of planets and galaxies, which is made up of atoms, but remember, according to quantum physics, atoms are also waves of possibility. Prior to measurement, atoms are waves of possibility. And when you ask same physicists, what are these? Where are these waves? They say they are in Hilbert space. So you say, what is Hilbert space? So, well, it's a mathematical space named after the mathematician Hilbert. So what is this space? And they will say it's a multi-dimensional infinite space. Some will say it is a zero-dimensional infinite space. But they mean the same thing mathematically. It's either multi-dimensional infinite space or zero-dimensional. Where is it? Best answer, shut up and calculate. The calculations work, but you can't visualize the space. In fact, on Twitter, I asked Sean Carroll, who's the MIT physicist, not MIT, sorry, Caltech physicist, written a big book recently, which, if you're interested in physics and cosmology, it's a great book. It's called The Big Picture. So I asked him, where is this space? He says, it has no location. It's a mathematical space. So it's a mathematical idea. Okay, a mathematical construct from which houses the wave function, which then shows up as this universe. You realize that we are now entering the era of scientific mythology, right? It's a great story, and the math works, but it's a story. 0.01% of the universe is visible in the form of stars and galaxies. And therefore, now many scientists, including physicists like Menas, my co-author, have come up with the idea of a conscious universe. That the random events may not be enough to explain the exquisite fine-tuning of the laws of nature, the rise of life on Earth. So some of you maybe know that I had this conversation, or you might say debate, or you might say shouting match with Richard Dawkins about 3 years ago in Mexico. And I told him that, conscious universe, panpsychism, which, by the way, I don't believe in. I should just tell you that right now. I'll tell you where we are going later. But I did mention to him that, Freeman Dyson suggests that even atoms are conscious. And that's part of the panpsychism theories that you'll hear this week. And he screamed at me. He said, Dyson could have never said that. He should sue you. You're misquoting him. Of course, I was quoting him from his book, which you might enjoy reading. It's called Infinite in All Directions. So anyway, you can find that debate on the internet if you look for Richard Dawkins and Deepak in Mexico. Afterwards, I wrote to Freeman Dyson, who's still alive. He's 93. He's still a professor at Princeton, one of the only people living who was Einstein's era. He's regarded as one of the most brilliant scientists, physicists of today. Crystal clear, Princeton, home of Einstein in his later years. So Freeman responded to me and Dawkins, because I said to Freeman Dyson, Dawkins thinks you should sue me for misquoting you. And he said, no, I have no intention of suing anyone. But I have to say that there are three riddles that have occupied my mind my entire life. The first riddle is a universe that's fine-tuned for life and mind. If the mathematics was off by a fraction of a decimal, you and I wouldn't be having this conversation. Okay, so mathematically, the universe is fine-tuned for life and mind, number one. Number two, he said, the unpredictable movement of atoms. Now, notice that he did not use the word random. This is a very fine distinction. Random means inherently random. Unpredictable means I can't predict. Can you see the distinction? Can you or not? Yes, because quantum physics is based on probabilities, right? And probabilities means I can predict the probability, but I can't predict what will actually happen in this particular movement of this atom. It's like going to Grand Central Station and looking at the crowd there, and it looks, everybody is going in different directions, and it looks so totally chaotic and random, but actually everyone is going somewhere. In fact, if I went every day, I could plot a distribution curve. So many people go to Philadelphia, so many people, or approximately, go to New York, so many people go to Chicago, so many people go to Detroit. And if I was a good businessman, then I would plan the future of the Amtrak based on those statistical probabilities, which are unpredictable as far as the individual is concerned, but probabilistic when given a distribution. So Freeman Dyson said, number one, a universe fine-tuned for mind and life. Number two, the unpredictable, very intelligent, smart distinction, movement of atoms. And number three, our own consciousness. So these are the three riddles that I've struggled with all my life. I do not have the answer to these riddles. Characteristic humility of a great scientist. But I think they are connected. I have preserved his email for my grandson and future generations because it's a very accurate description of where we are right now in the uncertain universe. Okay, so atomic universe, I've told you all this, and I'm going to take a very short break on this. The human universe is where I'm going right now. Beyond the conscious universe. The conscious universe is panpsychism. So what is panpsychism? That, and Tegmark summarized it very elegantly, panpsychism. Panpsychism says that consciousness is organized matter. So of course, these days you can reach anyone through Twitter. I tweeted to him, why isn't matter organized consciousness? But why panpsychism is still a physicalist theory? Because it presumes the existence of matter first and says wherever there's matter, there's consciousness. So it's what Freeman Dyson called atoms are conscious. When he made the statement, every quantum experiment forces the atom to make a choice. I'll tell you why that may not be right as we go through this morning. So, here is what I'm going to propose to you. The universe is actually, what we call the universe is consciousness. The universe is an experience in consciousness. And I'm going to go further with this. It's a human construct based on modes of interpretation of knowing and experience. I'll repeat that. The universe is a human construct based on modes of knowing and experience in consciousness. And that is basically, it is what consciousness looks like when consciousness experiences itself, which is the basis of the Vedantic saying, Atman is Brahman. Okay, so how do we know any experience? Right now you are having experiences. How do we know we are having experiences? Well, because we're conscious. How do we define consciousness? And you'll see many definitions of consciousness in this conference, this 1 week. So I'll give you two. One comes from Rupert Spira, who's a teacher of non-duality. But these are very Vedantic, and you know, the present-day non-dualist Western contemporary thinkers draw their understanding from three luminaries in India. One is called Ramana Maharishi, who was one of the most unusual, extraordinary seers of all time in the last century. The second great luminary of that tradition died only a few decades ago, Nisargadatta Maharaj. Have you read, anybody read his books? I Am That. Okay, so he's the second non-dual luminary. And the third is Atmananda Krishna Menon, all in the last century, by the way. These three formulated models that the present-day non-dual thinkers, including Rupert Spira, draw their knowledge from. I do also. So Rupert Spira says consciousness is that. It's a good definition. You might want to note it. Consciousness is that in which experience occurs. You're having an experience right now, and it's a perceptual experience. You can look at your body, look in this room, you look at me. That's a perceptual experience. It's happening in your consciousness. Also, you're having thoughts. You're interpreting what I'm saying. That's a mental experience. So there's perceptual experience and mental experience. And Spira says, translating the teachings of these great luminaries, consciousness is that in which all experience occurs, in which all experience is known, and out of which all experience is made. That third part is what we have to explore. We know that consciousness is where we experience this right now, this too, thoughts too, no argument. We also know that we are having this experience. So first two parts of the definition, no problem. But the third part of the definition is, it is that out of which all experience is made. Is this microphone made out of consciousness? Is this thing that I'm holding made out of consciousness? Is the plane I took from New York to San Diego made out of consciousness? Is the stars, galaxies made out of consciousness? And this is what the non-dual thinkers, philosophers, I hate to say that, they were not thinkers, philosophers, they were seers. They were rishis, but that's what they said. There is only consciousness. Consciousness is that in which experience occurs, is known, and out of which it is made. Everything, including my red shoes. Okay, so that's the last part we have to, today, go to through both intellectual understanding and experiential understanding. Because intellectual understanding is not good without the experience. It's like the mathematical formulas. Okay, those are intellectual without any experience. Okay, so what I'd like to do, I'll start this from the beginning. Let's start this again. Okay, play it again.
Sean, what's it doing? Whoa. Whoa! Get it. Get it.
Okay, can you see a few things? I mean, what struck me with that video is there's first a sense of mystery. Do you agree? Wonder. Do you agree? Almost awe. You see how he's trembling in the beginning? You see that? Show that. Right? You see, he kind of, he's mystified by this experience. Okay? Curiosity, of course. Mystery, awe, wonder. Joy. A lot of joy there, right? And at this moment, there's no language, right? There's no word that this kid has. But then what is the conditioned mind? Conditioned mind says, hey baby, your name is Christian, you're Indian, this thing that you are experiencing, this is called a hand, this is called a body, that's called a toy. You better not eat it, although the baby will try to. Will, taste it, smell it, try to eat it. Is it pleasurable? Is it not? Should I eat it? Should I play it? Should I throw it away? All no language right now, okay? The baby doesn't even know that it has a body, right? Or it has a mind. What does it know? Experience. There is the knowing of experience, and then the wonderment and the curiosity and the joy that is coming from a mind not yet conditioned. So we can say comfortably as grown-ups, although baby wouldn't be able to articulate this, that there is experience, there is the knowing of experience, and there is the joy. And what is the experience? Colors, shapes, sounds, textures, tastes, smell, and then something which could probably mental, curiosity, wonder, joy. No constructs at the moment. No name given to the perceived form, which as we see later, that the perceived form is an illusion. It's a phenomenon happening in consciousness. We'll think about that later, but this moment, there is only consciousness experiencing itself as colors, tastes, sensations, images, feelings, and not yet articulated thoughts. Because thoughts are interpretation of experience. Okay? Thoughts are interpretations of experience. All there is consciousness experiencing itself as this, and this, and the joy. It's truth, Sat Chit Ananda. This is what is the meaning of those three phrases, Sat Chit Ananda. The rest is construct. It's the human interpretation of experience. It's the human interpretation of perceptual and mental experience. Actually, perceptual is the first, then feeling is the second, I like it, I dislike it, and then interpretation, thought is the third. This is a toy, you are Indian, you're a boy, that's a blue shirt, this is your body, that's the world. So this you would say is when you're less than 1 year old. And the next slide, The next thing is my grandson, now 9 years old.
Fold your hands, bow your heads.
Can you raise
Planet Earth is part of a solar system, which is part of the Milky Way galaxy. The Milky Way galaxy has at least 100 billion stars in it, and the Hubble Space Telescope estimates that there are at least 100 billion galaxies in the universe. Multiply the 100 billion galaxies with 100 billion stars, and you get a number I can't even imagine. With this number of stars, there are trillions upon trillions of planets. On all of these planets, ours is the only one which we know there to be life. So we need to take advantage of this and live the best lives we can. And we need to help others live the best lives they can. Thank you and have a nice day.
Okay. So, by the time he's 9, he's bamboozled. Okay? Because now he's created the scientific universe. Right? And even by the time this when he gave this speech in his school 3 months ago, that's what's the estimate. Today, it's 2 trillion galaxies. That's the scientific universe. So, I've brought us to the point where the universe you and I know, the universe you and I understand, the universe that you and I experience is a human construct. At the moment, a scientific human construct. That universe is unavailable to an alligator or a dolphin or an insect with 100 eyes or a snake that senses infrared radiation or a bat that moves in the world through the echo of ultrasound. There are bat universes and insect universes and dolphin universes and snake universes. But ours is a human universe, interpreted today as the scientific universe. But if we can name something, if we can give something a description, I repeat, if you can name something and you can give it a description, it is a human construct based on modes of knowing and experience in human consciousness. And that includes everything that we call quarks, gluons, electrons, photons, dark energy, dark matter, galaxies. Everything that we can name is a construct you and I, through centuries of conditioning, created based on modes of knowing and experience in human consciousness. Therefore, I have a body is a human construct. I have a mind is a human construct. There is a universe is a human construct. Now what I'd like to do at this point is take a break for about 5 minutes. Could take a breather. My human construct, which is a body, says I need to pee. Okay, so I will do that. And then let's come back and let's take this understanding now a little bit through experience. We've talked about the theory where I'm saying the universe is a human construct. We make it up. And the we is not the body because we made up of the body too. The we is not the mind. We made that up too. The we is the consciousness in which both body, mind, and universe are a unified experience as human constructs. Now, I would like to actually do a kind of a meditation. We'll do many meditations, self-reflection, and also transcendence, and also what is called vipassana. We'll do all of that. We have the time. We have the luxury today. It's a gift to all of us, to me especially, because I can take my time and explain things in a way that I hope is understandable. But if you think I'm going too slow, then tell me, and I can wrap this whole thing up in less than 20 minutes. Okay? But you let me know. Okay, so we'll take a break for 10 minutes. So, we've already been here for 2 hours. We have 2 hours more. I plan to do some cognitive experiments and also some meditation. But if you want me to move faster, I'm happy to do so. Or is the pace comfortable for everyone so far? Because it does need attention. But if the pace is comfortable, we'll continue with this. Okay. So as you know, in the whole realm of consciousness studies, we have something called the hard problem of consciousness, right? How many people have heard about the hard problem of consciousness? Everybody here. Which means through a physicalist ontology, we cannot explain experience. Ontology is that branch of philosophy which deals with the nature of being. So once again, ontology is that branch of philosophy which deals with the nature of being, or what we call existence. And then there's another branch of philosophy that is called epistemology, that deals with the nature of knowing. How do we know what we know? Okay? And also deals with the limits of knowing. So ontology and epistemology are very fundamental to philosophy. What is the nature of being or existence, and how do we know what we know, and what are the limits of knowing? And the hard problem arises because of a physicalist ontology, which means that branch of philosophy and science which says that the essential nature of the physical world is physical, it's matter. And if you assume that the essential nature of the physical world is matter, then there's a very difficult problem called the hard problem. And that is, how does matter become conscious? How does the brain explain conscious experience, or even experience that may be subconscious or mental? And this word, the phrase hard problem, is coined by David Chalmers, who was supposed to be here, but he's in Shanghai at the moment. I was also supposed to be here. You heard of the mix-up. I was supposed to be in Shanghai, so he's there. But, David Chalmers used this word, hard problem, in one of the earlier conferences towards the science of consciousness, and he became a world-famous luminary in consciousness studies. He used to be in Australia. He's now in NYU, and I have an apartment in the campus, so once in a while we bump into each other, have dinner, etc. But even though David used the word hard problem of consciousness, the problem has existed for thousands of years. It's called the mind-matter problem. Okay, it's also called the mind-brain problem. It's called the problem of how do we experience anything, okay, based on the physicalist ontology. And today, by the way, among scientists, they make a distinction between physicalists and materialists. So materialists are those that believe that matter is fundamental, and physicalists include the elements and forces of nature as part of that. So space-time, atoms, particles, force fields, subatomic interactions, strong and weak interactions, electromagnetism, they're all included when we use the word physicalist. Okay, so it's a minor distinction. Materialists and physicalists are the same, but physicalists extend a little beyond just the obvious. That there's matter, but underlying matter are force fields of the universe, the strong and weak interactions, which are subatomic forces, the strong interactions which hold the nucleus of an atom together, the weak interactions which cause radioactive decay, and electromagnetism and gravity. And as you know, those people who are looking for a unified field theory, they have already come up with the equations and the mathematical and other proofs that subatomic particles, strong and weak interactions, and electromagnetism are unified. They're the same thing. What doesn't fit is gravity. And that's the problem right now with the unified field theories. You are all aware of that. And you are also aware that unified field theories today do not include consciousness as part of their looking for a unified field. So that's where we are today with the hard problem. We cannot understand consciousness through assuming that the universe is physical, made up of the forces and the fields and the atoms and the quarks and the gluons and everything else that science talks about. So let's try an experiment right now. Okay? So, and let's do it very leisurely, thoughtfully. Okay? Is everyone having the experience of this entity called Deepak on the stage? You're having the experience, right? In what form are you having the experience? Are you seeing something but then I saw the program, it says 9 to 1. So we advanced, you're likely to say, I'm here wherever you are.
His own theories about the mechanism of anesthesia and how it specifically targets.
In this paper, he has shown that the decoherence times.
Whoever you are somewhere there for me. And for you, you are where you are, and I'm here. This is our normal experience of life every day. So let's examine that. Now, where in you, which is here for you, where in you are you having the experience of seeing that which you call Deepak? Where, because you say I'm here, wherever you are, where in you are you having the experience of that which you call Deepak, who's there on the stage from your point of view? Where is that experience happening? Okay, somebody pointed to their head. In my heart. Anybody else? Okay, huh? In the mind. Anybody else? Eyes. Okay, so those are the usual responses. I'm having the experience, and remember I said having the experience of seeing me. I didn't say having the experience of hearing me. Right? Clear? So when somebody says, usually the answer, I'm having the experience of seeing you, they come up with two responses. One is I'm seeing you here through my eyes. And the other response, I didn't ask where you're hearing me or where you're feeling me. You know, somebody said heart, etc. I'm asking only two questions right now. One question, where are you having the experience of seeing me? Seeing is an experience. Just like hearing is an experience. Tasting is an experience. Smelling is an experience. Okay? Touching is an experience. Thinking is an experience. Feeling is an experience. Imagining is an experience. But I am now only asking one question, which can be applied to the others. But right now only, where are you having the experience of seeing me? Now, if we believe the physicalist ontology, if we believe the physicalist ontology, then this is the sequence. There are photons bouncing off an entity called the body of Deepak Chopra on the stage, and also they're bouncing off the stage, photons, and they're entering your eyes. The photons themselves do not have mass. We know that from physics, right? They don't have any dimensionality. They are both wave-like and particle-like. And they are bouncing, the photons on the earth are coming from the sun. The photons in this room are coming from those light bulbs as a result of the filament heating up to a certain level. And these photons are bouncing off me, and they're going to your eyes. Your eyes are 2.5 centimeters by 2.5 centimeters. They're 9 centimeters apart. By the time those photons get to your retina, where they need to go in order to get to your brain, they get inverted. Your retina is curved. So actually, if you're having the experience of seeing me in your eyes, then you should be seeing two of me about this big, upside down and curved. And furthermore, 9 centimeters apart. So whatever is happening in your eyes, seeing is not happening in your eyes. The experience. Okay? We know that there's a biological correlate that we have created as a human construct. That's happening in your eyes. Electrochemicals in your retina, and then something called an action potential going through your optic nerve into your brain. There's Deepak. There's this room. Okay? But I think you will agree with me that whatever is happening in the eyes, and I'll come to what is happening in the eyes in more detail, the experience of seeing me is not happening in your eyes. Would you agree with that? Okay. So at this point, people will say the experience is happening in the brain. So let's see what's happening in the brain. First of all, your brain is 7 centimeters by 10 centimeters by 15 centimeters or 14 centimeters. It's here. Okay? If the experience of seeing me is happening in your brain, then how do I fit inside your brain? 10 centimeters, 7 centimeters, 14 centimeters. How does this room fit inside your brain? You go outside and you see the Milky Way galaxy. How does that fit inside your brain? You go to the cove and you see the ocean and dolphins, and how does that happen in the brain? That experience. Definitely, something is happening in the brain. What is happening in the brain? Electrochemical activity and electrochemical activity that we call NCC these days. You'll hear this word all this week. NCC means neural correlates of consciousness. And the hard problem is, how does that create this? That's the hard problem. No one can explain that. Furthermore, if I look inside your brain, there is no picture of Deepak Chopra there. There is no picture of this room. There's what we call a neural correlate in the form of electrochemical activity, which changes, by the way, every time you have a different experience. So instead of saying, where are you having the experience of seeing me? You imagine, you can close your eyes and imagine the same experience that you're having now, actually seeing me, but as a mental experience. Or you imagine a beautiful sunset. Or you imagine a beautiful red rose. You imagine the look on the face of your mother when she smiled at you. That's an experience. What's happening in the brain? The same thing. Electrochemistry. So this is the essence of the hard problem when it comes to seeing. We cannot explain seeing. And yet that's what we are experiencing, seeing. So far so good? Well, the same applies to hearing. Right now what is coming to you from here is the vibration of molecules. Air molecules are vibrating. They're causing what we call a vibration of your eardrums. And if you go inside the ear, there are these little things called cochlea. They have little hair follicles. Those hair follicles start to vibrate as a result of the vibration of those tympanic membranes and the little bones that you have inside the ear. The vibration of the hair follicle, these little hairs inside the internal to the ear, that starts an electrical current. The electrical current goes to the brain, and the brain, same thing, electrochemistry. What you're experiencing, though, is this voice. You're not experiencing electrochemistry. You're not experiencing an electrical current. That's the neural correlate. But whatever is happening in your brain, hearing is not happening in your brain. So far, so good? Same thing with tasting or smelling. When you taste something, chemicals react with receptors in your tongue. They send an electrical current, same thing. Same thing with smelling. There's something called a neural correlate, but the experience of tasting, smelling, hearing, texture. When I do this, according to current theory, electrons are bumping into electrons, and then same thing, an electrical current goes. So everything that you call experience, based on a physical ontology, is an electrical current going to your brain. Whether you're tasting, smelling, hearing, seeing, or touching. The common denominator is electrical current. What's happening in the brain? The common denominator is electrochemistry. But you're not experiencing any of that. All you're experiencing is what we call experience, perception. So we can't explain it. That's the hard problem. Okay, we cannot explain what we call the physical world. And that physical world experience is the experience of your own body. Why? Because how do you experience your body? Seeing, touching, smelling, tasting. This is the experience. How do you know you have what you call a physical body? The experience of what you call a physical body is the same as the experience of what you call the microphone. Because the human body is a perceptual experience. hard problem. It's a very hard problem. Not only a hard problem, it's almost unsolvable. In fact, many people, many scientists today, that they say maybe humans have not evolved enough to explain the nature of physical reality. But what if there is no physical reality? Okay, what if that's another construct for what we call a perceptual experience? Okay, now we've done with perceptual experience, but let's talk about mental experience. Thoughts, feelings, emotions, imagination, instinct, intuition, creativity, vision, choice making. You'll see many arguments here in this week about do we have free will or not. And they will argue endlessly because trying to explain if you try to explain free will through a physicalist ontology, you can't. The laws of nature are fixed. Everything is mathematically construed. You have no choice. Okay, free will is an illusion. And the fact that you say you have no choice is also because you have no choice. Gets very troubling when you say, how do we experience anything? We can't experience the physical, we can't explain our experience of what we call the physical world. We can't explain the experience of what we call the mental world. If we assume that the world is physical, then we can't explain it. Now already, our current science, which is based on the physicalist interpretation of the world, already is kind of in a place where matter is becoming a mystery, right? Matter is made of molecules, molecules are atoms, atoms are quarks and subatomic particles, they are probability waves, and ultimately matter is nothing. You read these books, Lawrence Krauss, The Universe from Nothing, and how did nothing become everything, etc. But the nature of matter is mysterious right now. I asked Wilczek, the great physicist, Nobel laureate in physics. He discovered some particle, anion it's called. He's at MIT and brilliant man. I asked him, is the world fundamentally material? And he said, we are still trying to figure out the mystery of matter. Okay. But see, as soon as you make that statement, the mystery of matter, you're already assuming that there is something called matter. Right? So let's say instead of saying matter, we replace that with experience. We replace the word matter with the word experience. So instead of saying this is a microphone, we said, which is a human construct. Everybody agree? Human construct? Why don't we say this is a perceptual experience? You would agree with that phrase, right? This is a perceptual experience. How do you know there's this? Well, I'm experiencing as seeing. So this is a perceptual process. And now we have a solution. The perceptual process is a modification of consciousness. Okay? Consciousness modifies itself as the perceptual process, in this case, which we call seeing. Where is seeing happening? In the seer. What is the seer? The consciousness in which the seeing is an activity of the seer. And what is the seeing? This, all this, all in consciousness. Now we can say, what about these eyes? You know, when I get a cataract and when my eyes are damaged, I can't see. Right? That's true, isn't it? I need glasses to read fine print. So what are you saying? Eyes are not part of the seeing? Eyes and the occipital cortex are the perceptual process of seeing. Seeing itself is a mental activity. I can choose to see this or that or that or this. Consciousness is that which is giving rise to both the mental activity that we call seeing and the perceptual activity that we call occipital cortex, brain, this stuff, this body. So it doesn't eliminate the idea that the brain, body, physical world, or what we call the physical world, are a complementary activity to the seeing, which is a mental activity. These are complementarities of a fundamental activity that we, for lack of a better word, we have to use words because we are human beings, we call consciousness. So this experience is happening in consciousness. The seeing is happening in consciousness. The so-called seer, I, is also in consciousness. By the way, if I go inside your body, there's no I to be discovered, right? You can't find I in the brain. There's no little homunculus sitting there peering at the world through the brain. So I can't be found in the body. The seeing can't be found in the body. And the experience of the body can't be found in the brain either. Why? Because both mind and matter are complementary activities of consciousness. They are modifications of consciousness. Consciousness modifies itself as the individual seer, the individual seeing, and the individual scenery. Because the scenery is very different to, say, a bat or an insect with 100 eyes, or a dolphin, or another species. They are different species of consciousness. We are a species of consciousness that is having this experience, where there is an individual seer, an individual mode of seeing, and an individual experience of the scenery, all within that same consciousness. How come we all see the same microphone? Well, that baby, you saw that baby. It was having an experience. We told the baby, this is a microphone, that's your body. A word. So, at this conference, by the way, is a very distinguished linguist called Noam Chomsky. You probably heard the name. He's the #1 person as far as language is concerned. But everybody will tell you no one knows the origins of language. Just like no one knows the origins of life from a physicalist point of view, no one knows the origins of language. We have rough estimates. Written language, 5,000–6,000 years ago. Oral language, 20,000–30,000 years ago. How did it come suddenly into the human experience? We don't know. There's theories, but nobody knows. Okay, how does a baby pick up 5 or 6 languages just by hearing them? We don't know. My grandson speaks Mandarin, English, Spanish, and a bit of Hindi as well, because he heard them. His nanny is from Guatemala, so his Spanish is Guatemalan accent. Okay? So we don't know how that happens other than consciousness modifies itself into that experience. And actually, anthropologists, historians, deep historians will tell you what distinguishes the human being from every other species is that we learnt how to tell stories. So up until 30,000 years ago, there were about 8 different types of human beings, human species. What's a species? A species is part of a family. So, cats, tigers, cheetahs, lions, they are different species but the same family. Okay? Wolves, dogs, foxes, they are different species but the same family. So we were part of what we call the human family. Remember, that's a word also created by humans. And we call ourselves Homo sapiens, which arrogantly means the wise ones. A name we gave to ourselves. Okay? But then we gave names to other species of the human family. Homo erectus, Homo neanderthalis, Homo florensis, on and on. There were 8 different types of humans, and they were as different as a cheetah is from a tiger is, from a lion is, from a panther is, from your house cat is. They were as different. And these different humans, they had this kind of appearance. Some were this big, pygmies, some were bigger, but they had this appearance. And they all had a rudimentary language, which was basically mating and danger calls. Danger, tiger is coming, without those words. Mating, reproduction, survival. But then one species, us, we called ourselves the Homo sapiens, they first developed a language, we are told, by deep historians. You want to read a book on this, it's called Sapiens, and there's a new book by the same author, Homo Deus, Yuval Harari, Israeli historian from Oxford. So one species developed a language first for gossip. Okay, so-and-so sleeping with so-and-so, you can trust so-and-so, you can not trust so-and-so, etc. And soon that language evolved into stories. What are stories? Stories are constructs around experiences. So what did we do? We created money. Human construct. We created nation states. Human construct. We created races. We created the idea of gender around an experience. Nationality, all of that, which led to empires, to kingdoms, to colonial era, etc., because we had the ability to translate raw experience, which is raw experience is just sensations, images, feelings, thoughts. And when I say sensations, that includes sense perceptions. So the acronym for that is SIFT, S-I-F-T. That's raw experience. Sensations, images, feelings, thoughts. So now we have a model. We created language. We started creating stories around that. We created empires. In fact, according to deep historians, the different human species, they always had a pack leader, just like wolves have a pack leader. All, mammals have pack leaders in the wild. So humans had pack leaders, but the pack leader could never get more than 100 people to follow him. It was usually him because the him had to go and get food and, kill animals, hunter-gatherers, etc. So the pack leader could never get more than 100 followers. But the moment humans started telling stories, they could get 1,000 leaders. 1,000 followers. Millions of followers. Kings, kingdoms, monarchs. Why? Because they told the best stories. And then money and all the construct that we call the human world. And this was so powerful for the Homo sapiens that they decimated and got rid of all the other humans. So we don't have any other species of humans right now, just us. Why? Because we created constructs, we created stories around raw experience. And what was raw experience? Raw experience was seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, smelling, feeling, thought. Thought being the interpretation, which ultimately led to story, constructs, and everything else that we call everyday reality. Okay, so this is our evolution. And what I'm saying is that the brain itself is a human construct for a perceptual experience. When we say the perceptual experience is seeing, then the correlates we see as our perceptual experience, we call it occipital cortex eyes. It's a perceptual, it's what seeing looks like to an outside observer, is the occipital cortex and the eyes. What hearing looks like from the outside is the ears and the auditory canal and auditory cortex. Names we have given to a perceptual process in the same way as this perceptual process. So, brain is a human construct, body is a human construct, that which we call the universe is a human construct that includes stars and galaxies and gluons and photons. Names given to modes of knowing and experience in consciousness, and furthermore in human consciousness. In many ways, I think this is a good metaphor for the fall from grace. You see, the whole idea of good and evil and all of that comes from separation, right? We separated ourselves as the observer when the observer is an activity of that which we call the observed. They're the same activity, and the activity is in consciousness. So now you say, okay, so far is it good enough? Fair enough? Yes? No? Okay, so then the next question is, where is this consciousness where we are having this experience? Right? We are having this experience. I call that I. When I say I, it's where the experience is happening. Where is it? I can't find it. Can't find it in the brain because the brain is an experience in consciousness. Can't find it in the body because the body is an experience in consciousness. Can't find it in the universe because the universe is an experience in consciousness. So the I of experience cannot be found. And I've already tried to explain that the body, mind, and universe are constructs for experience. Well, if it can't be found, maybe the reason is it has no form. And if it has no form, then it must be not in space-time. Then it must be non-local. We now have a word for this, right? In the whole language has a word, non-local. Non-local simply means no location. Non-local in space, no location in space, no location in time. So formlessness, timelessness is also not in space. In fact, space itself is an experience. Right? Right now you're having an experience of me, then you also have the experience of this emptiness between you and me. We call it space. In fact, as I was researching my book with Menas, I came across a quote which is there in the book from Einstein, who was a very unusual person. He fought quantum physics. He did not believe in fundamental reality as outside the physical universe, but he was an extraordinary thinker. Okay, because he said once, He said many people think that if all the objects were removed from the universe, all that would be left is space. He said that in one of his lectures. I have the reference. He said many people think that if all the objects were removed from the universe, then all that would be left is space. But he says that's not true. Even space would disappear. Why? Because space is an experience when there are objects. When there are no objects, then there's no experience that we can call space. And if there is no space and there are no objects, then there is no experience that we can call time. You know, we measure space as time and we measure time as distance in space. Space-time is the word right now, right? You don't say space and time, you say space-time. Mass, energy, wave, particle. They're one thing. So Einstein said if you remove all the objects, even space would disappear, which means even time would disappear. So what is fundamental reality? Spaceless, timeless, formless. Where is it? Wrong question. Has no location in space and does not exist in time. What is it? Maybe it's I. Maybe it's consciousness. So now, of course, I'm resorting to my cultural bias. I'll say that up front. But in the Bhagavad Gita, in the Upanishads, Krishna, he says, that which cannot be seen, by the way, this is also in the other Upanishads, that which cannot be seen, but without which there is no seeing. That which cannot be heard, but without which there is no hearing. That which cannot be touched, but without which there is no experience of texture. That which cannot be tasted or smelled, but without which there is no taste or smell. That which cannot be imagined. How do you imagine something that has no form? Try. You can't. Try imagining something that has no form. So that which cannot be imagined, but without which there is no imagination. That which cannot be thought of, but without which there is no thinking. That which cannot be conceptualized, but without which there is no conceptualization. That is who you are. A formless being having an experience in space-time and causality, which we call form. That is who you are. And that the Sanskrit for that, tattvamasi. You are that, I am that, all this is that alone is. The formless, that through its self-interaction becomes all knowers, all modes of knowing, and all things known, all within itself. Almost an infinity of knowers. You know, every species is a knower. There's an I. A crocodile has an eye. A dolphin has an eye. An insect has an eye. That's why it goes towards pleasure and away from pain. It reproduces. The eye is reproducing. Those are species of consciousness with their own universes, but all within the one consciousness where there are almost an infinity or innumerable knowers, innumerable modes of knowing, and innumerable objects known. Seer, seeing, and scenery, all within itself. So again, again in the Gita, Upanishads and all this, when they do a cremation of a human body, they recite some verses. They say, water cannot wet it, wind cannot dry it, weapons cannot shatter it, fire cannot burn it, unborn, not subject to birth or death. You are that. Also call it the imperishable, because you can't destroy that which has no form. Furthermore, when you look at the form, you see it's a phenomenon. Right? This body is a form in appearance, but it's actually a phenomenon, because this body didn't look like this body 10 years ago, or as a teenager, or as a baby. Those were experiences. And experiences are constantly arising and subsiding. As what? As sift. Sensations, images, feelings, thoughts, perceptions. Therefore, birth and death is an experience now. When I walked into this room this morning, 9 o'clock, gone. 10 minutes ago, gone. A minute ago, gone. A second ago, gone. By the time I make this sound and you hear it, gone. So the past doesn't exist, the future doesn't exist, and the present is gone before you experience it. Because all experience is the arising and subsiding of sensations, images, feelings, thoughts in the formless consciousness, which then assumes this form and phenomenon. Every form is a phenomenon, and every phenomenon is in time, and every phenomenon is the arising and subsiding of intermittent sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts in a formless being. The formless being is not in time, the experience is in time. So the experience is frequently referred to in the Vedic tradition as Maya. Maya is a very interesting word. Maya, if you look at the roots of the word Maya, it can mean many things. So most people, when they hear the word Maya, they refer to the word illusion, the goddess Maya. She's a trickster. She tricks you into believing that this is real. But Maya also means, by the way, etymologically, it also means measurement. We can't conceive infinity, we can't measure it. You can't measure the timeless, so you measure it out as time. You can't conceive the infinite, so you measure it out as this finite. So the word Maya, the word music, the word matter, the word time, the word measurement, the word myth, story, they're all the same word. Human constructs. Okay? So, there's a quote from Wittgenstein, the German philosopher. He says, our life is a dream. Our life is a dream. We are asleep. But once in a while, we might wake up to know that we're dreaming. Our life is a dream, but once in a while, we wake up enough to know that we're dreaming. So what do we wake up to? Because that's another word for enlightenment, right? Awakening. What do we wake up to? We wake up to the formless being in which form and phenomena are being experienced in time. In every moment of now. We can't catch now. It now doesn't have a privileged position. All these people talking about now is the only moment in time, but actually now is not in time. Now is being, the formless. Mentioned Tagore earlier in Gitanjali, there's a poem where he says, in this playhouse of infinite forms, I caught sight of the formless. He uses masculine metaphor. He says, in this playhouse of infinite forms, I caught sight of him that is formless, meaning God or consciousness or infinite being, and so my life was blessed. Okay, so it's very, very intimate to people like Tagore, the idea that the formless is the only reality, and being not in time, it is eternal, but eternal not in the sense that it stretches for endless time. Eternal means not in time, timeless. Inconceivable. Can't conceive the inconceivable by definition, but without the inconceivable, there would be no conceivable. So that is awakening. Now let's try something as an experience from, these are very simple exercises, come to us from non-dual traditions, originally from Ramana Maharshi and Nisargadatta and Atmananda Ramana Maharshi and Krishna Menon, but many others. And recently, as I said, there are many non-dual followers of these traditions, which we also call Vedanta, also called Kashmir Shaivism, and on and on. There are many different branches of Vedanta with slightly modified models, but based on the same understanding. And what is the same understanding? That fundamental reality is formless, which means non-local, not in space-time, and then experience of that fundamental reality is in time, space-time, and causality. But in fact, in the most fundamental level of existence, there's no space-time, and therefore there's no causality. Okay, it's all correlated, non-local correlation, synchronicity, entanglement, superposition, whatever word you want to use. And of course, even as I say this, I can see some of the physicists rolling their eyes and saying, oh, misusing science again, pseudoscience. Never mind. There's a dimension of inseparability. And that dimension of inseparability is timeless, spaceless, without cause. Without cause. Cause is only in space-time. See, if you assume dualism, a lot of problems. Raise your hand. Raise your hand. You can't explain that. It starts with a thought. A thought has no units of mass and energy. You can't see it. And suddenly there's all this electrochemical activity and this activity. So you can't explain any intention if you assume a physicalist ontology. The intention is a modification of consciousness. You do this, or walk, or speak, or have any experience. It's one thing, and it's not a thing, because it's formless. Okay, so let's try an experiment, okay? And as I even do the experiment, I want to acknowledge all the great teachers of non-duality in our time also. People like Rupert Spira and many, many others to name. Francis Lucille, many Indian teachers. So I'm not going to. But I'm going to ask you a simple question. Are you aware? Of course you are, because you answered my question, right? So I'm asking you again the same question. Are you aware? But now do it, say yes a little more enthusiastically. Okay? Are you aware? Yes. Okay. Now I'm going to ask you the same question, but don't answer it till I raise my hand. No, don't answer. I'm just preparing you, okay? So I'm saying I'm going to ask you the same question. Don't answer it till I raise my hand, and then you can say yes enthusiastically. Are you aware? Yes. So are you aware is the thought. The answer yes is a thought. Between those thoughts is you, awareness. Awareness, no form. Thought, Also no form, but an experience. At least it's an experience. So now I'm going to ask you the same question. Are you aware? This time, don't answer it. Just slip into it. Are you aware? This presence is fundamental reality. Everything else is an experience in this presence. So the experience that you were once a baby, a teenager, the thoughts of a teenager, the emotional makeup, that's all experience, coming and going, as sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts. But the awareness is a constant. I is a constant. It's the presence in which this is happening. And how is it happening? The presence is interacting with its own self, usually as a result of conditioning into these thoughts, these feelings, these emotions, this body and this experience. So who do we wake up to? The presence, I. That's why this Argadatta Maharaj says, I am is before I am this, or I am that, or I am that. Okay. When Moses goes to the burning bush, says, God, what's your name? God says, I am that I am. In the New Testament, Jesus says, before Abraham was, I am. Why? Because Abraham was in time, I am is not in time. I am is the constant in every experience, but is not in time. Okay, so just to complete this experience, I'm going to ask you just one thing. Be aware, and then shift into that which is having this experience. Be aware. It's that simple. Awareness modifies itself into all experience. Awareness is not in time, experience is in time. That includes that which we call a body, mind, universe, which are stories around fundamental experience. Okay, I'll come back to a few other exercises, but let's complete now our theoretical understanding. All experiences are modifications of core consciousness. Humans create constructs around raw experience and assign names to them. In Sanskrit, this is called Nam, Rup. Nam is the name and Rup is the form. So everything that we give a name to also has a form. But when we start to look at the form, we see it's a phenomenon. And we look at the phenomenon, we see it's an arising and subsiding of consciousness modifying itself as knower, known, knowing. As seer, seeing, scenery. As observer, observing, observed. Nam Rup. Constructs create science, technology, art, religion, and civilization. So constructs are useful. Okay? DNA is a construct. Genes are constructs. They're useful. Why? Because by using these constructs, we change experience. I'll meet you at the corner of 56th and Broadway. We change experience. If I just said, I'll meet you, no experience. Okay, the body itself is a construct. Okay, so we created this. This is the human experience which distinguishes us, because consciousness is becoming aware of itself as the universe, as the mind, as the body in us. So the most fundamental constructs are mind, brain, body, world, and cosmos. No animal knows that it has a mind or a brain. It just has experience. In fact, no animal knows that it's called an animal. A giraffe has no idea that it's called a giraffe. It's a human construct. I was watching a video of Bo, Obama's dog in the White House, and it suddenly occurred to me, Bo has no idea that Obama is the President of the United States. Or that's it sitting in the Oval Office. Human constructs. Okay? So these are the most fundamental constructs: mind, brain, body, world, and cosmos. And then when we experience these sensations, which are basically the acronym SIFT, when we experience sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts, we give it the name mind. When we experience sense perceptions, we give them names such as brain, body, world, and cosmos. Names and descriptions are language constructs that nail down raw experience, which is all modification of consciousness within itself. A baby's raw experience is sensory: sight, sound, touch, taste, smell, along with pleasure and pain. The attraction or aversion to experience is rudimentary emotions. The interpretation of sense perception is thought. Without these human constructs, reality is consciousness in various modes of itself, not yet labeled as sense perceptions, thoughts, emotions, etc. The real reality is being, existence and awareness. It is timeless, formless, and dimensionless. In Sanskrit, the words are used: Sat, Chit, Anand. Sat means truth, Chit means awareness, and Anand means, well, it's usually translated as bliss. I like to think of it as undisturbed, profound peace. Everything else, mind, body, cosmos, are human construct derived from modes of knowing and experience in consciousness. Forms and phenomena rise and fall, and in eternal now. Devoid of constructs, we are timeless awareness, recycling in space-time as the experience of form and phenomena. Anything that can be named or described, from particles to galaxies, DNA to genome, from mind to brain, world to cosmos, is a human construct. Constructs are derived from, I'm repeating myself, from modes of knowing and experience in consciousness. Only consciousness can know. And what does it know? Experience. Therefore, you are the universe. There is only consciousness. There is only consciousness. So again, if you read the Vedanta, if you read Yoga Vasishta, there are some very beautiful phrases which can be very confusing in the beginning. So in Yoga Vasishta, which is a very amazing text, by the way, they say if you understand the Yoga Vasishta once, you're done. There is no more seeking. That is actually enlightenment. There's no need to seek at all. Because what you're seeking is the one that was seeking. What you're looking for is the one that was looking. And you know that. And so in the Yoga Vasishta, the story of the Yoga Vasishta is very fascinating as a myth, as a story. So Ram, who's the incarnation of Vishnu, who's God, in this story, his father, Dashrath, the great emperor, he sends him for learning about self to the great rishi, Vasishta. Vasishta is one of the 7 important rishis. Bhagirath, Vasishta, Bhrigu, there are Bhardwaj, there are a few others. And the 7 stars in the sky, they are called the Sapt Rishis, the 7 seers. Also, so Vasishta is an important guy. And so the incarnation of God, Vishnu, is sent by his father, the king, to get tutoring, private tutoring, from the great rishi, Vasishta. So as is the Indian custom, the student, the disciple, he touches the feet of the guru. just to pay his respects. And Vasishtha draws back almost in consternation. He said, don't do that. He said, why? He says, because you're God. And Ram says, I may be, but I've forgotten. So, I have come to you to remind me that I'm God. So that's the teaching in this text called Yoga Vasishtha. Written God knows when, but mostly recited in Sanskrit. And it is the remembrance of divinity in the teaching. So one of the sutras over there, he says, the world is illusion. Brahman is the only reality. So the world is illusion. Brahman, which is consciousness, is the only reality. So the first sutra is the world is illusion. The second sutra, Brahman is the only reality. And the third sutra, the world is Brahman. Contradiction, right? The world is illusion. Brahman is the only reality. The world is Brahman. It's not a contradiction. It's what consciousness looks like to itself as this universe. So it's not a contradiction. There is only consciousness. So this microphone, made out of consciousness, as an experience. This, made out of consciousness. This, as made out. That thought, that universe, that gluon, that particle, it's all consciousness. Again, analogy, if you want to use analogy, vapor, water, ice, statues of ice, glaciers. I can make a whole city with ice blocks, but it's still the same essence as water. Water in the vapor, water in the liquid, water in the solid, and water in all the forms that solid assumes. The essence is water. Before a wave arises in the ocean, it's water. As a wave, it's water. After it subsides, it's water. So, there is only consciousness. Before a thought arises, it's consciousness. As a thought, it's consciousness. As it subsides, it's consciousness. Before a perception arises, it's consciousness. As it is experienced, it's consciousness. As it subsides, it's consciousness. There is only consciousness. Everyday reality is a human construct. Now, these are repetitions, but I phrase them little differently because we're going to do another little experiment and then a meditation. So, fundamental reality is the observer, is the awareness, the excitations of which are the experience of observer and is observed in the timeless now. The fundamental experience of both observer and observed is sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts. Systems of thought, human constructs, include religion, theology, philosophy, science, economics, politics, mythology. Therefore, no construct has a privileged position over another construct. They're all human constructs. The construct is real for the person embedded in it. I'm a Hindu, now this is reality. I'm a Muslim, this is reality. I'm a Christian, this is reality. For that person, that is reality. In that construct, embedded in that construct. Excitations of awareness in the form of sift constitute all experience. Excitations are in time, awareness is not in time. Birth, death, body, mind, brain, universe, God, stars, galaxies, Big Bang, anything that has been given a name by humans, itself a label, are constructs. So, somebody summarized the teachings of Atmananda Krishna Menon in four sentences. So I'm going to share that with you. And I'll share it with you for whatever it's worth. Okay? So the first sentence from Atmananda Krishnamurti is that in every moment every moment of time, what you're experiencing as body, mind, and universe is a projection of your conditioned mind. In every moment, what you're experiencing. This moment, every relationship, every circumstance, every event, it's a projection of your conditioned mind. Number one, including your body. Number two, the real you was never born. First time you hear that, you say, what the heck? Okay. The real you was never born. Okay. Even the Sargadatta Maharaj, when people ask him about birth and death, he says, I was never born, so why are you asking me about death? Okay, what is born is experience, and that's happening now. Birth and death are now as experience. So the real you was never born. Number three, the same teacher, Atmananda Krishnamurti, summarizing a lot in those 4 sentences. The ultimate reality, we are inseparable. And the word for that is love. And number 4, even more abstract. If you can see it, touch it, taste it, smell it, imagine it, conceptualize it, it's not real. Only that which cannot be seen, which cannot be conceptualized, which cannot be imagined is real, because without that, what we call this would not be there. 4 basic ideas capture the whole non-dual teaching. So freedom lies in the experience of identity beyond constructs, pure awareness, consciousness, prior to subject-object split. All human suffering is the result of an attachment to a construct, including the fear of the construct we call death. Death happens to an experience, not to the awareness in which the experience is born and dies in the timeless moment of now. It is wrong even to call it a moment. Renee, we should take out the word moment, in the timeless now, because moment implies time. Okay, so now this is actually the basis of 5 very basic aphorisms in the Vedanta that are called the 5 kleshas. How many people heard the word klesha? Okay, good, I see. All great students of non-duality. So klesha means human suffering. It's a Sanskrit word. So the 5 causes of human suffering are, number 1, not knowing the real you, the real self. Not knowing fundamental reality. Spaceless, timeless, inconceivable, formless, non-local existence. Number 2, trying to hold on to that which cannot be held on to. Which is what? Experience, this experience. You can't hold on to it. It'll be over. It's already over, most of it. Okay? So trying to hold on to that which cannot be held on to because it's an arising and subsiding of experience in consciousness. Number 3, the fear of impermanence, which is fundamental reality as experience. Number 4, identifying with an fragmented, separate self called the ego. And number 5, the fear of death. Those are the 5 kleshas in Sanskrit based on this understanding. And then the solution to that is number 1. Who are you without those constructs? Once you figure that out as an experience, you're done. So freedom is now in just being. In the deeper reality, there's no mind, brain, body, or universe. There's only you. Okay. Now, because I was afraid that we would run out of time, even though it's a construct, I printed out qualia experiences for you because I did want to lose the opportunity of going through a couple of meditations and experience. So we'll start with that, okay? And then if you have time, we can go into qualia principles. Well, qualia simply means quality of experience, okay? So a quantum is a quantum of measurement. You know, quantum is described, human construct, quantum is described as the smallest indivisible unit in which waves of energy are emitted or absorbed. Don't have to remember, you can look it up. Everything these days is Googleable, okay? So a quantum is the smallest unit in which waves of energy are emitted or absorbed. A quantum of light is called a photon, a quantum of electricity is called an electron, a quantum of gravity is the theoretical graviton, which nobody has found yet, but maybe they do as a human construct. But qualia is quality of experience. So think of the color red. That's a qualia. Think of the taste of strawberry. That's a qualia. Think of your favorite song. Think of John Lennon, Imagine. What you experience in qualia. That's a quality of experience. And what is that quality of experience? It's an excitation of consciousness. Vritti is called, chit vritti. Chit is awareness, vritti is the excitation that gives you the experience, qualia. But what I'm saying here is even this is a qualia. Your body is a collection of qualia. The universe is qualia. Why? Because they are qualities of consciousness. They are vrittis, chit vritti. Consciousness is vibrating as this experience. Vritti means excitation. And if you read the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, the first phrase is chit vritti nirodha, which means the purpose of yoga is to get to the reality which is the basis of the excitations, vrittis. Chit is awareness, vritti, nirod means subsiding. Okay, so chit vritti nirod literally means that yoga is the way to get in touch with reality. Yoga is not a system of thought. It can be put as a system of thought, but it's experience. Whether it's Raj Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Gyan Yoga, the intellectual yoga, whatever, it is even the intellectual yoga is the yoga to get you through thought beyond thought. Okay, so Raj Yoga, Gyan Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga are all yoga to get to the root of experience, which is of course thought, perception, experience. Okay, that's why yoga is experience, even though it can be put out and mapped out as a system of thought. Because you can't get to chit vritti nirodha by reading a book. You have to do yoga. Okay? Okay, so where was I? I was saying is, we'll do a couple of experiments, but then I wanted something very important to discuss, and for the moment I've forgotten it. But let's do this as an experience. First, intellectually. Would you say this is an experience by now? Yes? And for now, this is an experience of seeing, right? Can you separate the seeing from the witnessing awareness in which the seeing is happening? Can you? Can you separate the seeing of this from the awareness in which the seeing is happening? So, this is a modified form of the awareness in which the seeing is happening. This is a modified form of the awareness in which the seeing is happening. in which this is happening, in which this sound is happening. In other words, this is you. Okay? So that is the meaning of the word I am that. All this is that, that alone is. Tattvamasi. So here's the exercise. I do it. Some people think I'm crazy. But I can walk in New York for a whole morning, looking at the Empire State Building, looking at people, looking at the occasional pigeon that you can see, and I look at everything and I say, I'm that. I'm that, I'm that, I'm that, I'm that, I'm that. I am this. And then the next hour I switch. I'm not that, I'm not that, I'm not that, I'm not this. Because nothing and everything are complementarities, right? Without the nothingness, without the formless, there would be no form. So it's a kind of a exercise. If you do as a sutra, Tattvamasi, or you can say Aham Brahmasmi, or you can just say I am that, and then you can say I am not that, which is the opposite of Aham Brahmasmi, Neti, 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 which is Shankaracharya's whole teaching. You can say I am that, 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 I am that. I am not that, I am not that, I am not that. I am the formless being in which I am that and I am not that. I am this. But this experience is happening in that formless being right now. So, talk about non-locality. Non-locality is the reality this moment, giving us the appearance of locality. Because this experience we are having is a non-local formless being. This is the veil. And many times, people misunderstand the veil in Sufism, even Islam, and in the Hindu tradition, in the Judaic tradition. The veil is the veil that is preventing you metaphorically to understand the real reality behind the scenes. Rumi, in one of his poems, says, this is not the real reality. The real reality is behind the veil. In truth, we are not here. This is our shadow. So beautiful. In truth, we are not here. This is the same goes to Plato, right? The Plato in the cave, those are the shadows that we are mistaking for the light. But the light is not the light. Metaphorically, it might be the light of the sun, but the true light is the light of awareness. Because light doesn't have color, light doesn't have texture, light doesn't have taste, light doesn't have smell. None of these things would be experienced without the light of awareness. That's why even in the New Testament, I am the light of the universe, I am the light of the world, you are the light of the world. I am in you, you are in me. I and the Father are one. These are metaphors for the culture of that time. But what is the light? The light is awareness. Before Abraham was, I am. Okay, so that's now, let's look at something else as an experience. And then if we have time, we'll go into the qualia experiences, but we don't have to have. I've printed it out and you can look at it, and they're in the book as well. But because not everybody is going to read the book, I printed them out. Okay, so let's do a meditation, okay? And we are going to combine several meditations into one. So before we even do that, before we close our eyes, meditation is so popular right now. It's like become a cultural phenomenon. And so there are many kinds of meditations. You've heard the most popular these days. Everybody's talking about mindfulness. Okay, just as a disclaimer, mindfulness is a wrong word. But it's here to stay, so we'll accept it. Okay, because the awareness of a thought is not a thought. The awareness of your body is not the body. The awareness of an experience is not that experience. So the awareness of the mind, therefore, is not the mind. But we are saying mindfulness. We'll accept it. It's a cultural meme now, so we'll have to accept it. And more or less, awarefulness is a clumsy word anyway. Okay? So, vipassana is true mindfulness. Vipassana, the word Sanskrit, is true mindfulness or being aware. And so, in the original teaching, there's the wheel of awareness, what we call Buddha's wheel of awareness. Neuropsychiatrist Dan Siegel has done a very great job in explaining the wheel of awareness. So think of awareness as a wheel and awareness as the hub of the wheel. And then the rim of the wheel is 4 quadrants. One quadrant is the 5 senses, sound, touch, sight, taste, smell. The second quadrant of the wheel is the body and the viscera. The third quadrant of the wheel is mental space. And the fourth quadrant of the wheel is relationship. Relationship, personal, professional, with the web of life, with the ecosystem, with the universe. And then the hub of the wheel is awareness itself. And this is all experience. You can't have an experience outside this wheel. 5 senses, body, internal organs, mental space, relationship. And the hub, awareness of awareness. So that's basically Vipassana in all its forms. Awareness of breath, awareness of a thought, awareness of an emotion, awareness of a sensation. That's all Vipassana. Okay. These days, mindfulness. But when people these days talk about mindfulness, they're talking either about, sensations of the body or not even that, awareness of breath, which is great. I mean, because if you just are aware of the breath, you'll get many insights. So that's Vipassana. Then the second kind of meditation is self-reflection, which we'll practice right now also. The third meditation is transcendence, usually through mantra. And then the fourth meditation is direct, being, right this moment. So with that, let's do the meditation. Okay, so put your feet on the ground, uncross your legs, keep your back relatively erect. Keep your hands open, if you will, with the fingers pointing upwards, if that's easy. Otherwise, whatever position is comfortable. And let's close our eyes. And we are going to do Vipassana and many other things. And even as I go through this process, I'll be doing a commentary as well, just to explain what we're experiencing. Okay, so start with observing the breath. As you observe the breath, you notice that it is spontaneous. There's no effort. There is the arising of the breath. There's a pause. And then there is a subsiding of the breath. So the arising and subsiding of the breath is in awareness. You're aware of it right now. Breath is an experience, an arising and a subsiding. In other words, it's a phenomenon in time. The arising and the subsiding is a phenomenon in time. Just by observing the breath, understand that you cannot hold on to it. If you do, you will suffocate. So breath is an arising and subsiding in time. you are the observer that is not in time. Okay, now shift your awareness to the sensations in your body. So just experience the sensations in your body from the inside out with your eyes closed, or if you want to, you can open your eyes, but your attention is on sensations in the body. Please notice that the sensations also arise and subside. They're intermittent. And please notice that the sensations that arise and subside, they do so spontaneously. And please notice that you cannot hold on to these sensations. You cannot hold on to a particular sensation. You can just observe it. The sensations are in time, but the observer is not in time. Now shift your awareness to any sound that you can hear in this room, including the sound of my voice. The sound of the air conditioner. That other sound that just appeared. See that sound you're hearing? Notice all these sounds arise and subside. That there's no such thing as a continuous sound. The only constant is the observer. The observer of the breath, the observer of the sensations, the observer of the sound. You cannot hold on to the sound either. It arises and subsides in awareness. Only awareness is the constant. Now shift your awareness to a mental image. Let's take any image, but for the sake of tradition, let's take the image of a candle in a dark room. Notice once again that the image flickers in and out. It's an arising and a subsiding. Try and hold on to that image, and you won't be able to. Only awareness is the constant. If we were to open our eyes right now, which we're not going to do, we would see this room and we would note that this is also an experience, a perceptual experience, in the same awareness where we experience the sound, where we experience the image, where we experienced the breath. Every perceptual experience is also an arising and subsiding in every moment. We cannot hold on to it. But the only constant is the awareness. If you want right now, you can extend this. So you can put your awareness on all the sounds that you're hearing, including my voice, on the sensations in your body, and on that candle flickering in the dark room. Do it all at once. So image, sound, sensation, all are happening at the same time. It becomes very clear that image, sound, sensation are actually all the same awareness modifying itself into those experiences. Any experience that you have is the same awareness modifying itself into those experiences in time. So now let's move from Vipassana to a little reflection. Who or what is having this experience? Who or what is having the experience of these sensations that I call my body, of these images, of these sounds, and these perceptions? Who or what knows this experience? What is it that knows it is having this experience? You don't have to answer the question, just ask it. Who or what knows it is having this experience? What is that which is the knowing of this knowing? What is that? Does that which is the knowing of this experience, does that have a gender? Does that which knows the knowing of this experience, does it have a race? Does that which knows this experience have a religion? Does that which knows this experience have a nationality? Does that which knows this experience have an age? Is it 23 years old, 70 years old, 5 years old? Does that which is having this experience exist in time? Does that which knows this experience have a location in space? So this is self-reflection. The question has the answer. And now let's move to a third aspect of the meditation, which is neti neti. So mentally repeat your full name to yourself. I am Deepak Chopra. I am Shamini Jain. Okay, now you can stop repeating your name, but bring into your awareness every experience that spontaneously comes to you at this moment in your life. All the work you are doing, your profession, your relationships, all your deadlines, all your stresses, all your problems, all your whatever is happening. Maybe a celebration, birthday, things you have to do tomorrow, things you have to do later this week, the projects you have, maybe you're presenting a paper. Let it all come up. Allow your awareness to fill up with every experience that is part of your life right now as it comes to you spontaneously. A lot happening there. Okay, let it go. And now just repeat your first name to yourself. I'm Deepak, I'm Roger, I'm Shamini, I'm Sahara, I'm John, I'm Paul. And now let go of that too, but allow your awareness to fill up with memories or experiences that you had when you were a child, let's say before the age of 12. See what comes up. Maybe your school, your classmates, your home, your parents, your bedroom, your teachers. Just let it come spontaneously. Okay, now let go of that. Now let's drop the first name and just repeat the name without a name. I am. With no name attached to it. And as you repeat I am, let memories and experiences fade out. Let them just become vague, disappear. I am with no name, no experience attached to it. And now if you want, we could replace I am with the Sanskrit sound, aham, which basically also means I am, but it's also the vibration of breath, aham. And finally, let's go of the mantra and just rest in being. Just rest in awareness. Just rest in existence. Rest in awareness. Rest in existence. Rest in being. Just be. Be aware. Be aware of being aware. Okay, so we want to come back now to this location in space-time, and the best way to do that is go back to your body, sensations. That's what your body is, an intermittent stream of sensations. So be aware of that, and then take a minute or so before you open your eyes. Okay, you can open your eyes. So this was very short, but it kind of gave you a taste of all the different ways of meditation, vipassana, neti, being aware. And what I want to do is, in the remaining time that we have, which is only 10 minutes or so, went by really fast, I want to show you some slides on the Neuroscience of Enlightenment, okay? Because that's what was promised. Okay, so here we go. Let's go back to the first slide of that Neuroscience of Enlightenment. Is this the first slide? I don't think so. Okay, here. Now remember, we have already said that the brain is a human construct, but it helps us map the correlates of experience. So let's very quickly go over the wheel of awareness. This is a diagram that I took from Dan Siegel's book on neuropsychiatry, but originally it's a Buddhist framework. The hub of the wheel is awareness. The rim of the wheel is all the things we can be aware of, and that's the totality of all experience. All experience. Okay, awareness of sensory experience, sound, touch, sight, and taste and smell. Awareness of the body, which includes both the musculoskeletal system, or that which we call the musculoskeletal system, the viscera, awareness of mental space, thoughts, images, sensations, awareness of relationship, friends, family, social, community, world, universe. And then the hub of the wheel is awareness itself. all awareness is an on-off experience, which is a modulation. All experience is a modulation of the awareness as that. Okay? We'd experience some of that. This is a diagram from Blake Gerfine, who's a neuroscientist, and it is part of a paper that I think, Shamini, you were in this paper as well as an author, and she initiated this. It's a very good map, again, of the human constructs that we call mind, brain, body, and everything else. But you can see that it's all one holistic system in awareness. Now, awareness, of course, can be conscious and subconscious, right? So right now, the awareness you have right now is conscious awareness. But there's a lot happening in your body which is not part of your awareness. Your heart is beating, your immune system is functioning, your body is regulating itself. That is all the subconscious mind projecting as the autonomic nervous system. Okay? And this is the conscious mind projecting as the brain body experience in this reality. So our conscious mind is just a ripple in the vast ocean of the unmanifest mind. The biological correlate of that unconscious mind is all this, as a construct. Okay? And that's pretty impressive, because Blake did an amazing job with this, because you can see he links everything from lymphocytes to cytokines to heart to vagus nerve to viscera, all as one whole system's biological activity. But remember that biological activity is happening in awareness, but you say, I'm not aware of that. Well, if there was some discomfort over there, if it moved from homeostasis or self-regulation, you'd pretty well be aware of it. Okay? You're not aware of your heart beating right now because it's not necessary. But if there was a coronary or a ischemic attack, you'd be fully aware of it. You're not aware of all the activity in your GI system, but if there was something going wrong, you'd be aware of it. So most of the activity that we call our biological activity is our subconscious mind. It's the complementarity to the biological activity, and it's being orchestrated by consciousness. Consciousness is that which is both the subconscious activity and the autonomic activity. And it comes into conscious awareness only when there's something wrong. It's happening in sleep, it's happening in dream state, it's happening now. Okay? So when we look at the brain again, these are all the different parts that we've identified, human beings, to a perceptual process that we call the brain, and then we give it names. Okay? And then we mistake the construct for the reality, but now that's a different discussion. We can still use this map, and it's a useful map. And so you have the prefrontal cortex, where through mindful awareness and meditation and actually being aware of the choices we make, we can actually change the synaptic networks of our brain. So that is a counterpart, the biological counterpart to mental experience, which we're changing in consciousness through these practices. Okay? So now we have scientists identify these different areas, give them names, insula, and then they say, oh, here is intuition, but also neural representation of all these other emotions, disgust, pride, lust, humiliation, musical expression, etc. And there's a new word that scientists are using now, interoception, sensing and regulating activity of internal organs, including heart, lungs, and gut. So interoception is another word for the Sanskrit words pratyahara, withdrawal of the senses, and then all the kriyas and all the techniques of pranayam and internal activity. You know, we can regulate our heart activity. That's what yoga is all about, okay? It's about interoception. And the vagus nerve is an important participant in that. Then we have a reptilian brain, which is the experiences of our evolutionary species of consciousness, startle center, etc. But it's also literally the subconscious mind of the cosmos as the reptilian brain in a species of consciousness that we call reptiles, which has the startle center, etc. Then we have the limbic brain, which is emotional in mammals. Only mammals have emotional bonds, and mammals bond through touch, facial expression, tone of voice, eye contact, body language, play. Mammals nurse instead of laying eggs, and emotions are actually part of our interbeingness. If we have love, compassion, joy, equanimity that connects us with each other, then we experience joy. If we are separate, we feel fear, anger, hostility, guilt, shame, depression, etc. So this is orchestrated with that construct that humans call the limbic brain. The reptilian brain is supposed to be 300 million years old. The limbic brain is only 100 years old. And now through technology, facial micro-expressions and heart rate variability, etc., lots of things, we can actually quantify what's happening in the limbic emotional brain. Hippocampus, these are all different parts of the brain, but remember, there are no parts. There are activities, and they're activities of the whole. Okay, but we name them as a perceptual experience as parts. Okay, so these are the neural correlates, and then emotions, and then the neocortex, which is what we now say distinguishes us from all other species, but actually all mammals have neocortex. We have the fastest growth of the neocortex, which started as we learned how to communicate through language. And what is language? It's the symbolic expression of experience, which is happening in consciousness. But it's biological correlate, which is growing right now. Even with meditation, we see it grows, the prefrontal cortex. It's only 4 million years old. So in the neocortex, we can experience through yoga ourselves making a conscious intention, because yoga is a practice of mindfulness, really. I mean, we have made this so complicated, but when you're doing yoga, hopefully you're not thinking of the stock market, but you're putting attention to your body and your breath. That's why the limbs of yoga. So consciousness of the body, monitoring and regulation of emotions, the ability to respond with flexibility, empathy, interoception. These are modern words for various yoga. Emotional modulation, GABA, GU. GABA stands for gamma amino butyric acid. GU, you know what GU means. So it's a human construct for chilling out. Insight, intuition, linking through the insula to the heart, intestines. These are the kriyas and pratyaharas. So these are the three brains that have evolved as species of consciousness. And what we're experiencing right now is great dysfunction in the world because of limbic dysfunction. Our reptilian brain is obviously necessary for autonomic function. Our limbic brain is what helps us to bond emotionally, but when there's limbic dysfunction, then everything happens, from domestic violence to child abuse to broken marriages to a world in peril. Okay, neocortex we can influence. I'm going to skip over Charles Darwin, who was very smart, by the way. He did do a book on the evolution of emotions that nobody talks about. But anyway, we'll skip that. But now we are in a new area. Spiritual exaltation, peak experiences, the thrill of discovery. These are both limbic and cortical modulation. So when you're in love with what you do, when you have purpose, when you're passionate, when you're emotional, and at the same time you're curious and self-reflect, that leads into creativity, and ultimately through love, compassion, empathy, which we are now realizing enhanced survival homeostasis through what is called limbic resonance. When we engage emotionally with each other, our limbic brains are modulating each other's limbic brains. And so there's no separate self, even biologically. Okay? Intuition, creativity, vision, sense of the sacred are what Jonas Salk, resident of San Diego, called metabiological evolution. The future of evolution, if we survive, is the evolution of the wisest, evolution of consciousness. And I will skip over these slides, which are very interesting, but not totally relevant right now. But they show the evolution of consciousness mainly here. Okay? We are a species of consciousness in this framework. And these are all the constructs we have created. And through limbic regulation, through emotions, we bond with each other because our moods, our brain networks, our hormone levels, heart rate, immune function, biological rhythms, blood pressure, sleep-wake cycles, dreams, digestive processes, everything that we call experience are inextricably woven through the web of relationship and emotions. So emotions can give us an understanding of the self too. You know, Thich Nhat Hanh says we are inter-beings that inter-exist in the inter-isness. There's no separate self. Okay, so mindful living is external environment. These are practices of vipassana. And then practices of the internal environment, also part of vipassana. Metacognition is observing yourself, making a choice, and having a sensory experience. What Krishnamurti called the highest intelligence. To be the witness of yourself without being the judge of yourself. Okay, so that's metacognition. Dan Siegel uses that word a lot. Observing ourselves, having a sensory experience, intentional perceptual experience, and self-observation, which activates the prefrontal cortex. Okay, so now here are what we call the various techniques for enlightenment, which I explained in the beginning of the conference. Just looking at time, we've run out of time. But let's say, non-reactivity, you stop, S-T-O-P, in any situation where you're reactive, your reptilian brain is acting up with the fight-flight response, you stop. S stands for stop. T, take 3 deep breaths and smile. O, observe the sensations in your body, which are the biological correlates of that reactivity. And P, proceed with awareness and compassion. Activate divine attitudes through gratitude, loving kindness, compassion, joy, equanimity. Be a silent witness, non-judgmentally, of the external and internal world. Practice interoception, pratyahara, bandhas, kriyas, yoga, nidra, etc. Transcendence, neti, 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 till all that's left is being or awareness. Metacognition, having simple awareness of choices you make and experiences you have. And that leads to the waking up of consciousness that we call enlightenment. So very briefly, the 3 normal, or what we call normal states of consciousness are waking, dreaming, sleeping. So waking is this right now, but you also do understand, I hope, this is a waking dream because it passes as soon as it occurs. Okay? It's gone. 1 second ago, it's gone. So this is a waking dream. Okay? Then the sleep you had last night, that's another state of consciousness where only the mental activity and qualia are active, but there's no perceptual activity. So it's a little bit of decrease in the excitations of consciousness. The vrittis are subsiding. And then deep sleep, this is non-local consciousness, no subject-object split. Okay? So these are 3. They have Sanskrit words. Jagrit, Swapna, etc. Okay? Sushupti, these are the Sanskrit words for waking, dreaming, and sleeping. The 4th state is, I've called it soul consciousness because people are used to the word soul, but the original word in Sanskrit is turiya, which means transcendence, which means being aware of being aware. Okay? So that's the 4th state, turiya. Now, as we expand this consciousness, and enter the fourth state, then because fourth state is non-local, right? And even deep sleep is non-local. But soul consciousness or what we call turiya is being aware of being aware now. That expands our consciousness into the realm of possibility from actuality, or what we call actuality. More ambiguity, more unpredictability, more possibility, more creativity, more synchronicity. Why? Because it's non-local. Non-local, it's entangled with all that exists. Okay, so that's called turiya, fourth state. The fifth state in Sanskrit is called turiya tatta, which roughly is translated into English as cosmic consciousness. So it's local and non-local awareness at the same time. Local awareness is this, space-time and causality. Non-local is being. But cosmic consciousness is beyond turiya. It's called turiya tatta in Sanskrit, where even in deep sleep, there is awareness, witnessing awareness in deep sleep. Even in dreams, there's witnessing awareness in dreams. And there's witnessing awareness of the body in deep sleep. With that comes the realization, I'm not the body and the mind. Those are modulations of myself. And with that comes the loss of the fear of death. So that is the fifth state called turiya tatta in Sanskrit. I'm the alert witness of the body and mind. Not the body and mind. The body and mind are transient experiences in time. More synchronicity, more creativity, more love, more compassion, more joy, more inseparability, more non-locality. And in this state, the awakening of what the yoga traditions call siddhis. Siddhis are translated roughly as supernormal powers. But they're basically non-local sensory abilities. So what you would say, non-local seeing. Seeing somewhere, you can see what's happening in your home right now. First you say, is it imagination? But then you confirm that it was really happening. So clairvoyance, clairaudience, all the so-called psychic powers are non-local, dormant qualities of consciousness that wake up with waking up to consciousness. Okay, so that's called cosmic consciousness. I'm a non-local being having a local experience. Or in the Christian traditions, I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. Or what else? You know, there's so many ways of... I'm in this world, but not of it. Then even further expansion, divine consciousness, which in Sanskrit is called Bhagavad Chetna. Bhagavad is the word for divinity. So now the witnessing awareness is not only fully awake in the subject of experience, it's fully awake in the object of experience. So I see myself in you. Okay, and when I see myself with you, I commune with you non-verbally, non-locally, and because me here and you there is the same being, and this is the realm of ecstasy or ecstasis or extreme joy, and according to the Vedic principles, the realm of miracles, because only consciousness is communicating with consciousness in both subject and object, and every object. So even this object, or whatever we call object, it's the same consciousness, so communion. Okay, divine consciousness, Bhagavad Chetna. And then last is unity consciousness. The Sanskrit word for that is Brahman consciousness. So in that you realize that actually there's no separation in space-time between subject and object. There's only the self and the whole universe, which is a construct in the self for the experience of the self. Brahman is the only reality. The world is illusion. The world is Brahman. Not intellectually, knowingly. And so these are the practices that I put in English for yoga, essentially. Yoga means union. Okay, so Yogast Kuru Karmani is the expression in Sanskrit. Established in yoga, be in this world and perform action. But don't lose your connection to your source, which is the infinite being at this moment having a local experience. Okay, so this is it, and thank you so much. Now we can show through some of our research that brain, body, biology, experience, and reality shifts in different states of consciousness. So very early research at our center we are doing, and we have many people who are helping us with this. A shift in, and this is actually, we're seeing this in people who are going through retreat programs and meditation program, a shift in identity from personal to non-local self, a shift in cognitive mechanisms in the direction of non-local experiences, a shift in emotional being in the direction of love, compassion, joy, equanimity, a shift in actual perception, you know, what people call celestial experience, divine, everything is shining, full of light. People have these experiences, and at the same time a lot of joy. A different way of using memories. In the Shiva Sutras, there's an expression, I use memory, but I do not allow memories to use me. So where are those memories? You know, when I asked you, think of your childhood, everybody had some experience? Yes, no? Okay. They're non-local. They exist as possibility. Only when you recall them, there's brain activity. And so those memories are possible memories, which are called sanskaras, karma. Okay, so when a child is born, it already has a personality, sanskara, memories. Where are they? In your being. If you want to use the word soul, that's fine. In your jiva. Okay. And they are dormant, they live only as non-local. That's an experience in time. Okay, so different use of memory. And then finally synchronicity, which is non-local correlation. Creativity, which is quantum shift in what we call context, meaning, relationship to create a new reality or emergence. And the organizing power of intention. Intention orchestrates its own fulfillment. There's an expression again in the Upanishads and even in the Vedanta, originally before that in the Rig Veda, it is called Ritam Bhara Pragya. Ritam is the Sanskrit word for rhythm, the symphony of the universe. Ritam Bhara, Bhara full of, Pragya mind. When the mind is in harmony with the cosmic mind, then intention organizes its own fulfillment, which is manifestation of all kinds, but basically manifestation of the life experiences that you have intended from that level of being. Synchronicity, which means chronos is time, synchronos, synchronized in time. Same thing as meaningful coincidences, spontaneous fulfillment of desire, effortless spontaneity, effortless creativity. There are many, many words for these and different ways of describing. Ichha Shakti, Kriya Shakti, Chit Shakti. Ichha Shakti means the Shakti, the power, the feminine face of God that is there in all of us when we are grounded in being. Okay? Ichha Shakti, that's Shakti of intention. Kriya Shakti, spontaneous right action without karma. Okay? No karma attached to it. And then Chit Shakti. Chit Shakti is the Shakti of pure awareness. We hope to identify. I was going to introduce qualia mechanics, but you have it in the handout. So thank you very much. This was a full 3 hours. Thank you.